What's up, gamers? It's Tuesday. Let's get tactical, everybody. Let's talk about some Tyranids today. We'll keep on talking about those super cool 9th edition leaked Tyranid Codex. Today we're going to do a tier list of all of the models in the Codex. I don't really want to talk about Forge World today, so we're gonna leave the Forge World stuff for later. There may be some reworks to Forge World models. We just don't know. So we'll keep it to the Codex for right now. And yeah, we're gonna rank them A, B, C, D, and S tier, and we'll just get through it. Yeah, I think we're gonna, for this one, continue to assume Crusher Stampede, Hive Fleet Leviathan Supplement, not legal for right now. I don't know if that's the case, obviously. Exclamation point Crusher, exclamation point Leviathan, if you want me, you want to hear my exact thoughts about those supplements. And let's freaking do it. I do want to make this kind of a cooperative experience, because obviously we're super early into the Codex. This is going to be like first impression stuff for the most part. I reserve the right to be totally incorrect across the entirety of this tier list. And I think it'll be fun for me to talk about my opinions of each unit. Obviously, the chat to give some opinions of their own, and we can kind of combine those into an overall score. And I think that'll be a good time. So let's freaking do it. Let's get into it. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, chat. I appreciate everybody coming and hanging out. Yeah, we're going to workshop this tier list, chat. 100%, for sure. Can't wait to go in Carnifexes. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, chat. Carnifexes are so freaking sweet. Carnifexes are one of the things that have impressed me the most out of the Codex so far. I know some people think they're like mediocre or whatever. I don't know. I don't buy it. I think Carnifexes are, if not the best version of the list, I think they're probably like in the top 3 Tyranid archetypes you could build out of this Codex for sure. Oh yeah, it is on Warhammer Media. The community think Leviathan Supplement and Crusher Stampede will stand. I don't know. Yeah, who knows? Speaking of Wahapedia, chat, Wolfhunt bringing up a good point. Wahapedia, for those who don't know, wahapedia.ru, they have this cute little graphic. Let's go on the screen. They have a cute little graphic on that they updated recently, because the new Tyranid Codex is on Waha. So if you want to follow along and take a look at some data sheets, it's literally all here, which is sick. Huge shout out to Wahapedia. Literally, 40k would be an unplayable garbage mess, even more so than it already is without Wahapedia. So super appreciate these guys, and I think it's awesome that they jumped on this so quickly and threw all of this, all these abilities in here. I mean, it's just incredible. So good on them. I was actually playing a game with my old 8th ed Tyranids, and went to go look up a rule, and I was like, these are all wrong. My Venomthropes are not 5 attacks and 2+ poison. At least today. But at least we now have an easy reference guide for all of the rules. And I imagine they must have manually entered that, which is insane. Because usually, if I remember correctly, usually they rip out of the EPUBs. But I guess they just typed it all out, which is super sick. Anyway, good for them. Yeah, Wahapedia. Awesome. Support them on Patreon, by the way, if you're not. I give them some money on Patreon. I use them like daily, so I feel like it's worth it. And anybody else who can do that. Although I'm not sure if they're getting it right now. They might actually not be being paid currently because they're in Russia. I don't know. We'll find out. Let's talk about Tyranids, though, for now. Let's get through this tier list. So I think I have all of the units from the Codex in here, and we'll just get going. I don't think this is in any particular order. It's in whatever order they uploaded as on Tier Maker. So I think we can just bang it out. Yeah. Oh, I have a Tervigon twice. Why is that? I don't know. I guess I just have a Tervigon twice. We get to talk about the Tervigon 2 times. Perfect. This is flawless. It's getting off to a great start. Does Wahapedia update regularly? Yeah, it depends on the specific of the Codex, but usually they're within a week or so of the Codex coming out. Sometimes in this case, they are before. Laufer got a legit scan of the Codex. That's how we got it done so early? That's sick. Well, whoever got that to them, ace work. Ace. All right, let's get into this thing. We'll talk about Tervigon number 1 over here. What do we think about the Tervigon? I think the Tervigon, I don't know if it's certainly not gonna be at the top tier, but it's not bad in the current version of the Codex. I don't think Termagants are worth playing, so I think its synergy with Termagants you could basically ignore. But the fact that it comes with a unit of Termagants is actually a pretty big deal, especially since it can kind of use them to project, you can use them to take Stranglehold for a turn for free, right? One thing to keep in mind about the Termagants that it spawns is that because they're not added to your army list normally, so they're not included in a detachment, I don't believe that they get objective secured, so that's one thing to keep in mind. They're just bodies that you can use to run and grab objectives and stuff. But being able to spawn those and use them potentially as action monkeys or something similar, I think is pretty good. In addition, the unit itself is difficult to kill. You can give it adaptive biology for 5+ damage ignore. You can, obviously give it transhuman. If Crusher Stampede sticks around, it's going to be friggin' awesome. It's going to be super tough to kill. There's a couple of different ways to increase its toughness as well, so you can make it toughness 9. And you can potentially, if you don't give it adaptive biology and your plan is just to cast Catalyst on it, you can give it objective secured with the Warlord trait as well. And I think those are all pretty solid for a unit that has a gun, pretty good damage output in melee, it casts psychic powers, and it does all these support things. So I would put it probably top of B tier somewhere in here. I don't know if I would take it in every list, but I certainly think it's a potentially competitive choice. Are there 2 Haruspexes too? I only see 1 Haruspex chat. Oh no, there are. Why are there 2? I don't know. Whatever. Weird. I did have to upload twice because of something got cut. So maybe it uploaded some stuff twice. I don't know. Whatever. We'll just ignore those. Speaking of Haruspex, here's the Haruspex up next. I don't know if I like the Haruspex. It's a slow melee thing, and those don't really go together. It was defensible in the previous version because you could Hive Commander it, but now it's just like you're just casting Onslaught on a Haruspex. I would much rather be casting Onslaught on something else. It has a billion attacks, but they're only 2 damage. I like that it has variable attack profiles. Obviously, it's the billion 2 damage attacks or the less D3 plus 3 damage attacks. Like, when it hits you, it's going to hit you like a truck. But it doesn't have any way to buff its attack rolls, which is not great. So you're just rolling a bunch of dice and hoping the dice don't screw you because it doesn't have the core keyword. So I'm kind of leaning towards C for Haruspex. I think as we get further on in the Codex, I think the non-core melee monsters are gonna drop down and down. Specifically the ones that don't have any other use. So things like Haruspexes, potentially Toxicrenes, because they don't have any built-in dice fixing and you can't put any auras on them, they're just doing whatever they're doing. Whereas a Maleceptor, Exocrine, those are like the same cost and do other things. The Maleceptor is this insane combo piece. The Exocrine is just a good, some good suppression fire, basically. And, yeah, I think that is pretty okay. You can strat for plus D3 attacks. I think, though, that's just for if you've given it adrenal glands, right? Does the Haruspex get adrenal glands upgrade? I don't remember if which have the upgrade options. It's kind of random it depends on what's in the kit. Yeah, they can't take adrenal glands, so you can't plus D3 attacks them. If you could, that would be pretty okay. And I guess, well, we shouldn't talk about Crusher Stampede, but if you could aggressive surge them in Crusher Stampede, you get 3 additional attacks per one on the D3 on the Ravenous Maw, which is kind of sweet. But I'm gonna put the Haruspex somewhere in C. I think. I don't know if I love it so much. I think Broodlord's gonna be somewhere around the same place. The HQ slot in Tyranids is gonna be super contentious because I think you almost always want 1 or more Hive Tyrants. The Hive Tyrants are great. You almost always, I think, want a flying Hive Tyrant or Swarmlord, one or the other. And then Neurothropes are just insane. Tyranid Primes even are pretty good, although you're almost always going to get the Prime for free, so you don't need the slot. But I think it's mostly Hive Tyrants and Neurothropes are fighting for that HQ slot, and fitting a Broodlord in is super tough, especially since this guy's damage output went down. Why? He rerolls his wound rolls, but he lost his flat 3 damage on wound rolls of 6, so like, he just kind of sucks at punching. He's just 2 damage. I don't think there's any real contention if I throw this guy in the garbage pit over here. So this is the standard Carnifex. Let's actually just talk about all the Carnifexes here right now. So we have the standard Carnifex. This guy right here is going to be the Screamer Killer. And then we have a Thornback in here somewhere. Where you at, Thornback? Maybe I forgot it. Did I miss Thornback? Well, that sucks. I think the Thornback is going to get rolled into the regular Carnifex, though. I don't think they're going to be... I definitely have an image for it. That's weird. I don't think that they're significantly different. The Thornback is going to be a little bit more range focused, and it can't really, it can't build make the hybrid build as well as the regular Carnifex can. It also can't take Venom Cannon, right? So I guess you're probably not going to take a Thornback most of the time. I think Screamer Killer probably somewhere up here. In A tier, I think Screamer Killers are phenomenal. They take a million attacks. Yeah, you get the Broodlord for free if you get the Genestealers. Yeah, I mean, that's fair, but also, okay. I'm already spending points on Genestealers. Like, I don't know if I need a Broodlord. It's a toss-up between whether I would take a Neurothrope, right? One of the best HQs, probably in 40k, or I spend a little bit extra and I get this Broodlord, and I get a unit who's significantly worse in every other situation besides being in melee. And I don't really want to be in melee that much anyway. Oh, yeah, chat. Next is Tervigon. Here's the Thornback. We found him. Thanks, chat. I appreciate it. It's like somebody... It's like a madman made this list. What a fool. But I think Screamer Killers are potentially one of the best monsters in the game. Having the core keyword for them is super important because you can buff their attacks, you can reroll them, you can give them objective secured. It's pretty solid. I think Screamer Killers are great. The regular Carnifexes and the Thornbacks, I don't like Thornbacks. They're locked to Barb Stranglers or Death Spitters, right? And I don't really like the Death Spitter so much. If you're paying a bunch of points for a dude with a big gun, you might as well get a multi-damage gun. And the Stranglethorn Cannon's just kind of meh. At 2 damage with all the damage reduction running around right now, I think it's more defensible than the 1 damage Death Spitters, but especially because it's D3 plus 3 shots, so on average 5, so 1 less shot than the Death Spitters, but it's plus 1 damage and plus 1 strength and extra range. It's heavy though, I guess, which is whatever. The big downside for me for Thornbacks is the volume of attacks. You kind of want to build them to be all shooting, and then you don't do anything in melee, which is super poopy. So I don't know if I like Thornbacks. Their special abilities are good, and especially since the downside of Thornbacks previously was that you couldn't take Sporsis on it, which was like the big benefit of Carnifexes. Now we don't care about Sporsis so much. So you are not as... The downside isn't quite as prevalent as it was previously in the previous comparison. But now, I don't know. I just want to charge people with Screamer Killers. So I think Thornbacks are probably my least favorite version of Carnifexes. Maybe somewhere like mid to bottom tier. The regular Carnifex probably somewhere B tier. Being able to have a Venom Cannon with a decent melee profile, so you can wander up the table. They still have, are they 9 attacks on the charge for the regular Carnifex? Am I remembering that correctly? Plus the Venom Cannon shot. They're not as fast as a Screamer Killer, so their threat range isn't as good. 7 attacks on the charge, plus the Venom Cannon shot. I wish the Venom Cannons were still assault, by the way. It's kind of upsetting that they're heavy now, so you can't advance and shoot them. It's too bad. But the regular Carnifex, you can also take the Devourer build, and there's some cool combos you can do with that. You can put Toxin Sacks on them and use like 6's auto wound to Pathogenic Slime, and full rerolls from Swarmlord, and just try to like blitz a bunch of auto wounds, like Gene Rot might auto wounds on somebody. There's an adaptive an adaptation for like Blade Artist on your guns, so 6s to wound are +1 AP. So you can try to get an AP value on them. Hive Fleet Chronos, you can push an AP up by 1, and they go to 22-inch range. So, like, I think there's builds for the Devour Carnifex. And then you could also take the Melee plus Venom Cannon Carnifex. I think that's also good for anti-tank. I don't think either of them are as good as just Screamer Killers, because Screamer Killers are so efficient, but I think it's worth considering. Screamer A, Carnifex B, Thornback B or C. JJ, I'm with you, dude. Yeah, it's really dumb. The loadouts on the 2 specialist Carnifex builds are so wild to me. If Thornbacks could take heavy Venom Cannons, I'd be considering them. But the fact that they are locked to Barb Stranglers is so weird. I don't know. I don't get it. We got Deathleaper next. Now, we had a discussion on stream yesterday that currently there are a lot of defensive stratagems that Deathleaper actually doesn't ignore, which is pretty killer to her position. I think she's still probably fine because she stops interrupts, so it's like a fight last with extra steps, and she stops offensive stratagems, so your swing back is not as bad. Plus, her Warlord trait's kind of sweet. Her defensive tech's kind of sweet. You can't shoot her from outside 12. Unlike a regular Lictor, the regular Lictor's like, I sit on objectives and don't die. And you're like, okay, what else do you do? And they're like, that's it. At least Deathleaper's got other stuff going for her, and she's harder to kill, and she has better stats. So I like her. I still like her better than the regular Lictor, but I'm not sure I would include her in most lists until such time as her ability gets clarified. So the discussion we were having is that right now, units in engagement range with her can't be selected as the target of stratagems. However, defensive stratagems usually target the enemy unit attacking and then affect a unit for the entire round. So, for example, Transhuman Physiology doesn't select a target. It works on the target of an attack. So there's like kind of a roundabout argument to be made that her ability turns off all stratagem selection while it's active, which means that your unit wouldn't be considered the target of an attack for the purposes of that stratagem. That might be how it's intended to be used, so it turns off defensive stratagems. I don't know. Currently, I don't believe that it stops things like Transhuman Physiology or Emperor's Auspice, so I would put her probably top of C tier somewhere. That's much lower than I would like her to be because I want her ability to be useful. But if it only works on offensive stratagems, it's kind of poo-poo. But stopping interrupts is like fine, and she like gives you Pheromone Trail and stuff like that. So she's not like this indefensible pick. But I really want her to be able to get around defensive stratagems, and she simply can't do that right now. So it's not, to clarify to chat, her ability is not, you cannot be affected by stratagems. It is, you cannot be selected for stratagems, and you cannot be affected by stratagems that trigger when that unit is selected to shoot or fight. So that's things like Veterans of the Long War, for example, says when this unit is selected to attack, you get +1 to wound. She stops that because you can't be affected by stratagems when you're selected. However, something like Transhuman Physiology doesn't have that wording. I guess we could just pull up Transhuman Physiology and talk about it. Go into Adeptus Custodes. So we have, here we go. So here's Arcane Genetic Alchemy, right? When an Adeptus Custodes unit from your army is selected as a target of an attack until the end of the phase, each time an attack is made against the unit, blah, blah, blah. The unit in question is never selected by the stratagem. It's selected by an attack, and then the stratagem triggers and delivers an effect. So the stratagem doesn't target a unit. The stratagem targets an effect, and then has an effect on the target of that attack. So the way that there's an argument for this ability to work is that while Deathleaper's engaging you, this selection doesn't consider you to be... this selection is ignored, basically. But that's not how it's worded. So right now it doesn't work. Basically, you can't be targeted by stratagems is the thing, and this doesn't target. So that's what we're going with. So I would put Deathleaper pretty low. She stops Phoenix Swords from reviving? Probably. Anyway, we got Exocrine next. I talked about how Exocrine is one of the best units in the Codex. Let's put it in the top. I think Tyranids need big guns in order to be able to compete in the over the center of the table. The Exocrine is the biggest gun in the Codex. Full stop. We're done. This thing's freaking sweet. Every list should have one of them. I don't know if we need to talk about that much more. It ignores dense cover now, which is freaking awesome. It ignores light cover too, which is less useful because its AP is enormous. It has a very good profile. Strength 8, AP 4, 3 damage is pretty sick. You can Tesla its attacks between a Tyranid Prime and its own Observer Organism strat. It's hard to kill, especially if it's sitting in the back and it's in a Venomthrope aura and you can give it invuln saves. It's a good recipient for like Voracious Appetite. Exocrine's great. I don't know if we need to talk about that so much. Compare that to Eternal Penitent. So Eternal Penitent's different because that's a list building strat. So we can talk about like, here you go, Fraternity of Heroes. Oh no, that's the Heroic Intervention one. Here we go. Indomitable Guardians turns off. Select one Adeptus Custodes unit from your army. Can't do that. You can't select them. How about there's some other good ones in here. Oh, the Null Maiden one. Select one Anathema infantry unit. This is the one to give you -1 to hit. This works at the start of a phase. You select a Sister of Silence, and they get an aura of -1 to hit. Doesn't work because that would select the Sister of Silence unit, and you can't do that. Sorry, we're just a little bit off screen here. Let me see if I can fix that. Yeah, that's this one. Creeping Dread. I guess we could zoom out a little bit, which would probably help. There we go. That one works. I'm sure there's some other ones in here too. There's a lot of them that are like selection, but they wouldn't work if you're engaged. Like this one is like Psych Out Grenade, right, is like select... yeah, this is when you're selected to shoot. So that would turn off because of the second class of Deathleaper's ability, but you can't throw grenades when you are in melee anyway, so it doesn't matter. So there's a couple of them that select, but it makes no difference. It would be stuff like, like in Space Marines, like Gene Rot Might, right? It's like when you're selected to attack, your 6 is to hit automatically wound. Like I said, Veterans of the Long War, when you're selected to attack, your wound rolls get +1. All of those style of abilities, those all turn off when you're selected. Slayers of Nightmares, when you're selected to fight, you can't do that. So it turns off specifically stuff that says when you're selected to shoot or fight, and stuff that says select one unit. Those Deathleaper turns off. But things that are like when you are targeted by an attack, those don't turn off. If that makes sense to everybody. Anyway, there you go. We got Genestealers next. This is probably going to be a contentious one. I think Genestealers are really good. I have a tough time fitting them in my army, though, which is the problem. Not because they're bad, but because they are a utility unit, and it's hard to, like... I don't know. It's hard to get utility units into my army sometimes. How much will Parasite of Mortrex be? Probably, I would say $45 US. I'm going to call it out. How much is a Space Marine character? How much is like Caven Shrike? I bet Caven Shrike is the best comparison. Let's take a look. I bet it's as expensive as Shrike. $42. Let's do it. That's my final answer. All right. So Genestealers, I think will probably be. I think we'll temporarily go bottom A. It might be top B. I think the reports of the Genestealers' death have been greatly exaggerated because Genestealers do something that Tyranids have never had reasonable access to, which is forward deploy. And Genestealers can do that. They're a fast unit. They can't advance and charge innately, but you're going to Synaptic Link Onslaught to them turn 1 anyway, so it's like whatever. They have 1 billion attacks, 4 attacks each at AP 3, which is awesome. They're core keyworded, so you can chain like rerolls to them and stuff like that. So you can forward deploy them, even if you don't have redeploys access, or access to redeploys. If your opponent has turn 1 deep strikes, you will screen out the turn 1 deep strikes, which means they've already done a good job. If you get to go first with them, they can immediately start messing your opponent up because they can, make a pretty long charge, blow up some OPSEC infantry, overrun around, contest objectives, do stuff like that, or just stand around and do actions, which I think is great. So I'm a big proponent of the Genestealer. I think it's probably worth trying to fit Genestealers into your list. What you cut for them is the real question, and I don't know what it is. So I think as Tyranid lists get smoothed out, we're gonna find lists that have 1 to 2 Genestealer units in it be very effective, and I think that's gonna be where they live. They get much better if Leviathan retains because you have the redeploy Warlord trait, so you can deploy them forward and then redeploy them back if you don't need them. That's really good, and that's why I would take them for sure. Yeah, Vanguard deployment is awesome. 100%. What do I think about the 20-point node to regenerate them? I think it's garbage. I think the unit is gonna the role of the unit is to be as cheap as possible because they're already kind of expensive for what they do, which is stand in front of your army and make sure you don't die. And making them more expensive is anathema to completing that plan efficiently. So, plus the fact that they're T4 with a 5-up invulnerable save. They're just going to die as soon as your opponent looks at them. So, you're not going to be in a position to regenerate them. Yeah, I don't know. How many units am I thinking? I would say... I want to say 2, but 2's so many points that I don't know. It's probably 1. And you just screen out the most important part of the table to stop your opponent turn 1 deep striking. But I don't know. Exocrines are rank ass with the trouble with blast weapons. They can easily counter by engaging them in melee. Not in Tyranids though, chat. So here's the thing about Tyranids. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish it because I spent time talking about Knights this morning. But I have a video coming out about how ridiculously stupid the Tyranid Psychic Phase is. And let me tell you something about the Tyranid Psychic Phase, or about the Psychic Phase in general, that you might not know. It happens before the shooting phase, which means if your opponent engaging your Exocrine in melee, you're just going to kill them with smites. And then you're free. That's just what's going to happen. And there's very little that can stop you because your Psychic Phase is ridiculous. So I don't think it's a problem. That's my opinion on our Exocrines being engaged. I talked about a little bit about how hoopy they are in melee, but I honestly don't think it's an issue. All right. Let's talk about Harpies. I think Harpies are great. Let's put them at the top. They have super good guns. They bomb super well. They're super fast. The one thing that Tyranids don't do very well is reach. In this codex, they're very good at attacking your opponent's front line, but if your opponent has artillery or something, hiding behind a wall that you can't shoot at, or psychic power, or charge with your Canifexes or whatever, you can't do anything about it, and the Harpy can. The Harpy's just I'm gonna fly over their boss, I'm gonna shoot them with 14 attacks plus a bomb, and they're probably gonna die. And you're thanks, Harpy, you're the best, and you cost 170 points with Venom Cannons, and that's... what a deal. We don't need to talk about Haruspex number 2 because that shouldn't be in there. We can put Tervigon number 2 back in the bottom there too. If it survives to your turn, yeah, I mean, that's the case, right? So the downside of the Harpy is that the Exocrine can be hidden, right? The Exocrine and the Harpy are very similar because the Exocrine's between 7 and 9 shots, 3 damage. The Harpy is 6 shots, 4 damage, plus a little gun also. So their damage output, I think the Harpy tends to average a little bit more just because of the bombs, but their damage output's very similar and their range is similar. The difference is that you can obscure an Exocrine, you can't obscure a Harpy because it's real aircraft now. I think there are going to be situations in which you go second and the Harpy immediately dies, and that sucks, and that's just how aircraft are. That's why I don't think you take a Harpy specifically, and I don't know if you even take it over an Exocrine. You take it alongside an Exocrine, so you have both. And then you can do other things to buff them. So the Venomthropes are going to be there, so they're -2 to hit. They get around hit buffs. You probably turn one Venomthrope aura anyway, or a Zoanthrope aura, excuse me, anyway. And if you're in Leviathan, you can make them transhuman by giving them a Synaptic Augment. So they're actually kind of tough to take down, in my opinion. Do Tyranids have a strat to shoot the Exocrine into close combat? Not that I'm aware of. They have a strat to ignore cover with Exocrine, but I think that's about it. Next up we have the Hive Crone. I talked about how I don't really like the Hive Crone. I'll put it at the bottom. Some people have been trying to sway me around with the Hive Crone. I don't know. I think that there's a camp that Hive Crones are good against Harlequins, which I can understand because they have an auto-hitting weapon, and they get +1 to hit against flying units, so most of the Harlequin army. But I think the one upside there is that their Flamer is very good, right? It's a 2d6 Flamer AP2, which is solid. It's not the most efficient Flamer the Tyranids can get, though. And they also don't have the bombing, the Spore Mine bombs that the Harpy does. So even against stuff like Starweaver, a Harpy is going to do on average 3 mortal wounds before it rolls any attacks. A Harpy probably just kills a Starweaver, and a Hive Crone has to roll out all of its attacks to do so. And I don't like it. I don't even think in that matchup it's particularly that much more effective. I think there are going to be special situations where Hive Crone's more effective, but I think that in the vast majority of matchups, the Harpy is just dramatically better than the Hive Crone. So I would almost never take a Hive Crone over a Harpy, especially because you're capped at 2 Artcraft anyway. So like you can't. They are directly competing with each other. It's not like, well, just take one of each, or 2 of one and one of the other. You're going to take one or the other, and you might as well take a Harpy because it's better in every situation. So yeah. I don't like that guy. I don't like it. Good to hear Harpy's worth. Well, Harpy's been good in Crusher Stampede, or a lot of people have considered it being good in Crusher Stampede. Tyrants have a fallback and shoot imperative at -1. Oh, yeah, maybe that's what we're thinking about is the imperatives. Yeah, I don't believe there's a fallback and shoot strat. We can just double check though. I will definitely say that I don't have the entire codex memorized, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. But there are some stratagems in this codex that I am embarrassed that I've forgotten about so far. There have been situations where you definitely could have. I definitely could have done much better than I did. I don't see a fallback. Let's take a look at imperatives here, chat. So, Hive Tyrant is fallback and charge. It's not fallback and shoot. I think that there is a sub-faction ability for fallback and shoot, is what you're thinking of, chat. It is one of the biomorphologies. I think it's a lurk biomorph. Is that right? Or is it a hunt? Oh, it's a hunt. So you actually have access to it. In most of the, I think almost all of the sub-factions have hunt, right? So if you really need to, you can just pick that sub-faction ability. If you're like, oh, I have 2 Exocrines and I'm really worried about them getting engaged, you can just do that. You can just do that. I wouldn't be worried that worried about getting engaged. They play so far back. Like an Exocrine is not this frontline unit you're going to deploy at the front of your army and they're going to get stuck in combat. If your opponent has stuff that can get back and touch an Exocrine, it's like small utility units. It's like these little, aspect warriors and Vanguard veterans and stuff like that. That's going to like be peeking around the sides like bikers and things. Not these enormous, super tanky units. And if you have, your army should have Zoanthropes in it. Your army should have Neurothropes in it. You'll have extra casts to spare, and you will just smite those guys to death. I don't know, outside of situations where you're really afraid of your opponent getting in, or you have a real range focus and you're really afraid of your opponent getting in and engaging your stuff, I don't know if I would need to take this up action, but you still have it available to you in most of the Hive fleets if you need it. If you aren't eating something while watching this, are you really a Tyranid player? Oh man, I feel bad I'm drinking something now. I'm not just eating on microphone. Feed biomorphology has an exoskeleton stabilization, which removes the penalty on monsters. Yeah, the issue is that we're not talking about penalty, so that's this one. The problem with that is that the bioplasma on the Exocrine is blast keyworded, which specifically cannot be fired in engagement range. It's not that it gets -1 to hit; it's that it can't shoot at all. Which is the downside there. And this doesn't ignore shooting in melee, period. It just ignores the hit penalty for firing heavy weapons. Custodes bikes are not easy to smite down. That's true. You're not that wrong about that. But I think if a unit of Custodes bikes has gotten far enough back into your lines that they've engaged an Exocrine, and it's like a full unit of them, you're just gonna melee them. So it's like you've traded the gunshot and the Exocrine to kill an entire unit of Virtus Praetors anyway. So like you're feeling okay about that. Typically, when I have a Virtus Praetor mucking around in my backline, it's one guy. Because he's like charging into something, I've killed 2 of his buddies, and then 1 dude survives wounded, and he comes in the back, and I can smite him to death. I very rarely have an entire unit of 3 run into the back. Sometimes it's the shield captain, and that guy might stick around. But I mean, even then, I'm gonna get a shield captain. Like I don't think anything survives a Tyranid melee in the heart of a Tyranid army. Like, if there's one thing to say about Tyranids, it's that their melee profiles are phenomenal. So, like, your Venomthropes will kill most of a Virtus Praetor unit. All right, we got Hive Tyrants up next. Let's talk about it. Foot Hive Tyrant. I know a lot of people are super up on the Foot Hive Tyrant. I'm not one of those people. I don't think the Foot Hive Tyrant's very good. I think that the upside of the Exocrine is that, like, it has one role, and it's very good at doing that one thing. But a Foot Hive Tyrant is trying to do too many things. It's like a mediocre Psyker. It can take a gun, so it's a mediocre ranged weapon, and it can take one set of, if you take the gun, you only have one set of melee weapons, so you're kind of a mediocre fighter as well. You're not very fast. You don't have that many casts. You're like 2 casts, so you have to buff him to do anything. And I think people are going to learn pretty quickly that, like, just fighting Tyranids in a straight-up fight is not going to be profitable for them. So what you want to be doing with the Foot Hive Tyrant is, like, getting in a situation where your opponent has to, like, move up the middle of the table and get up into a regular fighting match with you. Like, you're playing against Foot Salamanders. That's my favorite scapegoat for this style of gameplay in 40k is like a Foot Space Marine army, where they're like, all right, everybody deploys on the line. We move 9 inches forward because we advanced. Your go. And this Foot Hive Tyrant's like, haha, you can't shoot me back, and I'll stand out, and I'll shoot them. But nobody does that. Like, Space Marines of that archetype are not viable. You're not gonna, like, you're not worried about about playing against that matchup. So this big Foot Hive Tyrant is like, he's designed for to play a game that doesn't really exist, in my opinion. He's very good if you're in those big shooting matches, because he can be hidden by Tyrant Guard and he can just trade shots with them, but you don't need it. Just take Winged Hive Tyrants. They're better. So, I'll put him... He might be bottom B. Like, I don't think it's bad, but the problem is he's competing directly with Swarmlord and Winged Hive Tyrants, and there is, in my personal opinion, there's never a situation I would take him over those guys. So, I don't like it. Winged Hive Tyrant, though. Ooh. Somewhere top here. I'm going to put him top A, but I think there's a potential for him to go bottom S, depending on how our bell curve comes out. Foot Hive Tyrant is super cheap. Sure, but, like, for 25 more points, for 30 more points, I can just get a Winged Hive Tyrant. Like, it's not... Like, the issue isn't the cost of the unit. The issue is the HQ slot and the Hive Tyrant slot it takes up. Like, Yeah, it's not that the unit is in and of itself bad. It's that I will never take it over a Winged Hive Tyrant, basically. But the Winged Hive Tyrant, I think, in my opinion, is threat projection that Tyranids don't really have anywhere else. They have all of the monsters that can be relatively fast, but they're not as fast as a Winged Hive Tyrant. He moves 17 plus an advance, and then you onslaught him. His threat range is super long, and his damage output's very good. Obviously, it's probably the same as the Foot Hive Tyrant. He doesn't get a gun, but he does get the 2 extra attacks, and you're probably Voracious Appetiting him almost every time he's fighting, so he's getting full rerolls on base 7 attacks, plus whatever you have upgraded him with. I think there are a bunch of melee builds that are super duper good with this guy. I know Reaper of Obliterax is getting a lot of play right now, which is probably the best relic weapon. I was super into Size of Tyran when this things got spoiled. I was like, oh, you can make it like Strength 10 or whatever, but it's not as good as the Bone Swords. I come to realize that now. The extra damage from the additional effect on the Bone Sword weapons is much better than the extra 2 base attacks from the Size of Tyran, and you get a Lash Whip with it, so you get to reroll all your hit rolls, and you can save, even if you don't Voracious Appetite, you can save your Prehensile Pinsel Tail reroll for your wound roll, which is pretty cool. I like Bone Sword and Reaper of Obliterax. I like Bone Sword and Maw Claws, because they bump him to 6 attacks with full rerolls that then cascade if he starts killing small enemy units. So if he starts eating, like, their little chaff units and then overrunning or encircle the foe to deep strike again, then he just starts getting better and better as the game goes on, and I think that build is really cool. I built a list with 2 Flying Hive Tyrants and Tyrant Guard, which I kind of like. I might play a little bit more with that, and I just think they're great. So there you go. T7 with a 4+ invuln, fragile with no damage reduction. Yeah, I mean that's always been the case, chat. But Winged Hive Tyrants have always been a staple of how Tyranids play, and I don't think it's changed. And the goal is not to sink in and survive attacks. The goal is to never be attacked at all until the game's over, basically. So the longer you can keep your Hive Tyrants dealing damage to your opponent and not being dead is a pretty good one. Now, I talked a little bit about how I totally forgot about a stratagem, and one of them that I, for some reason, I've even talked about it before and how good it is. I just forgot that Encircle the Prey exists, chat, and you can use it on a Flying Hive Tyrant, and it doesn't matter if it's in engagement range. So this stupid Hive Tyrant, right? You're like, oh, I'm worried about it getting stuck in my opponent's army, and they kill it. But for 1 CP, it's never in range to be attacked. You also have Overrun, so you have 2 different ways of getting the Flying Hive Tyrant out of melee. So you're just... it's so good. Yeah, a list isn't limited to 1 Hive Tyrant, chat. It's 1 per detachment. So you play double patrol to get 2 Hive Tyrants. So I've been playing 1 Flying Hive Tyrant and a Swarmlord, and I've been playing two Flying Hive Tyrants. I tried the Foot Hive Tyrants at one point, and I really wasn't a huge fan of them. I think the other issue with the Foot Hive Tyrants is that they're relatively slow, and they don't do that hit. They don't have that hit and run game plan like the Flying Hive Tyrant does, especially if they have the Relic Cannon, because then their melee output's really, really bad. So you do actually have to fight with your opponent, and then they charge, like you charge them, and then they charge you. And so you charge them, and you punch something, and then you die. And then your Hive Tyrant's dead. You don't get to use it anymore. But the Flying Hive Tyrant, if it kills what it charged, it just overruns away. If it doesn't kill what it charged, it just gets hit and then encircles. This frickin' Hive Tyrant is so sick, chat. Is Venom Cannon worth a Flying Hive Tyrant? Never. I would never take a ranged weapon on a Flying Hive Tyrant. I would always take melee weapons on him. Every time. The goal is to pulverize something and then run away. It's not to sit around in the back and shoot. Maybe Starved if you take double patrol. I haven't really felt it. The number of stratagems you're using in Tyranids now is significantly lower than the previous version of the Codex, because you don't have things like Hive Guard and that are just like sucking your stratagems dry. I found that you typically have a lot of CP to work with, and that gets better obviously if you get if you can take a CP regen in your list. So if you have If you get CP back from Cranial Feasting, or if you can take a CP regen like Kraken, then you're solid gold on CP. I haven't really found it. It's been super bad. All right. Let's talk about Hormagaunts next. I don't like Hormagaunts. Unfortunately, I don't know where I put them. I think C tier is feeling kind of full right now, so I think I would put them somewhere in C tier. Maybe like here, like Deathleaper level. They have a thing that they do, which I appreciate, but the thing that they do is not worth how many points they are, and that's it. They have a super fast turn 1 threat. They can pregame move, and then they can advance and charge with their strat, and they can make ability attacks. You can put full rerolls on them. You can put a bunch of buffs on them, and they do a bunch of damage. But they're 10 points a model if you upgrade them at all, and if you don't, they're just weapon skill 4, strength 3. Like, I mean, you could get them to 9 if you only take Toxin Sacks, but the fact that those upgrades are not a per unit basis like the Warriors are is insulting. This unit it's ludicrously expensive for this unit. I think that there are situations in which like you'll go first with these guys and they'll move 6 inches and you'll charge and be like, look at how much damage I do and how I'm pinning you in your deployment zone. It's so strong. And they'll feel great for that. But there are going to be much more situations where your opponent points a single blast weapon at the unit and they get vaporized, or you charge them and you do very little damage and they get killed on the swing back. Or you take too many of them and you get no prisonered because you have like too many extra, like you have too many infantry units in your army and you give up 1 billion points and your opponent like beats you trivially. For 8 to 10 points a model, ridiculous. If this unit was 6 points a model, if they were 8th edition costing and you could upgrade them for 1 point per model, maybe up to 8 if you take both upgrades, I totally understand. I get it, 100%. 8 points a model base, ridiculous. It's stupid. It's so bad. Oh my god. Don't like it. I think a 10-man unit with Toxin Sacks is good for trading with enemy objective secured. Why aren't you just taking Genestealers in chat? Or just, like, anything. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. This unit's not good. We got Hive Guard next. Ooh, this is a spicy one. What do we think about a Hive Guard, chat? I think Hive Guard are definitely somewhere in C tier for sure. Probably like here. But I appreciate that Hive Guard do a thing. I don't know if it's a thing I would ever include in my army. But there's a universe where Hive Guard are okay. Right now, they're too expensive for what they do, and the range on their weapon is too small. But, I mean, if you take them in High Fleet Chronos, they go to 28-inch range, and they can get to AP 3 if they're in 14. With their Impaler cannons, I would never take a Shock Cannon. The Shock Cannon's stupid. And that's something. We're close. We're so close. If they were 50 points still, and maybe their range was 30 instead of 24, we're cooking with gas now. But unfortunately, they've like turned one too many dials back for the Hive Guard to be that good. But they're so close to being playable. It irks me. I don't love it, but I wish that they were good. I think there's we could see a year from now, we could see a balance errata where they take Hive Guard and they push their guns up. And it has been posited that the range on their guns is a typo and they should be a 24, or they should be a 36-inch range and the shot cannon should be 24, and that I would understand to be 60 points a model. I don't know if I would take them, but it would push them up like a little bit, like a couple spots. They're just too expensive and stuff for what they do. They might end up down in D tier as we move on, but I do think that it is important that we keep in mind that they do something unique in the faction, which is indirect fire shooting, that nobody else in the faction can do. And I think that's important to note. The shot cannons are cheaper. But they're the difference with the shot cannons is that they do a thing that other things in the Codex do. You're like, oh, I'm going to take the shot cannon, which is just a regular gun. that's 3 damage. So if I'm spending 150 points on a regular gun that's 3 damage, and 6 shots for 3 dudes, why wouldn't I spend a couple more points and get a whole Exocrine who has like 50% more attacks and more strength and more AP and more stratagem support and all this stuff. The shot cannon is big poopy. It's super bad. It's super bad because of the comparison with Exocrines, I think. Hive Guard need core keyword? Yeah, maybe. I think you could get away without it if they were the right cost. And their gun wasn't ridiculously hamstrung. I talked about Lictors. I don't like Lictors. I would basically take Deathleaper for 20 more points if I had a Lictor, if I wanted a Lictor in my army. The fact that they don't, like, contribute to scoring, really. They set on an objective and they don't. And they can't be shot. And that's, like, cute, but... yeah. I don't like it. Maleceptor, though. Oh, did I miss Pyrovores, chat? Oh, no. Did I? Oh, I think I did. Yeah, Pyrovores are poopy. I'd put Pyrovores in here. We don't need to talk that much about Pyrovores. Maleceptor's next up on the list. Yeah, I guess I don't have a Pyrovore. I put two Tervigons and 0 Pyrovores. That's too bad. Oh well. Maleceptor's super duper good. We're gonna put him up in S tier. The Maleceptor combo is sort of ridiculous. I think it might be the best list in the faction. Is a Tyranid Psychic list that centralizes on the Maleceptor combo. I built a list with 2 Maleceptors the other day, and I did not dislike it. I think that it is contrary to what I said in my initial review. I think that the Maleceptor combo is way easier to pull off than I sort of anticipated it was, and that this unit's insane. I do think it's a little fragile for what it needs to be doing, because it wants to run directly up the middle of the table and destroy whatever's in front of it. And T8 4+ invuln, even with transhuman from High Fleet Leviathan, isn't quite enough to keep it alive. It needs like one more thing, and which is kind of tough to source on it. You can catalyst it, and that's good. The Venomthrope aura is good. It's not like the easiest thing in the world to kill, but the fact that it sits directly in the center of your army and just runs up, I think it needs to be a little bit more difficult to remove. But if you can get it to the point where it starts doing its thing, it goes absolutely apeshit on your opponent. So I have a video coming out later this week where I talk about the math of this thing. It's an 80% chance once the combo is assembled to get 3 mortal wounds from its Psychic Overload, and you do that 4 times. So it's highly likely you get 9 mortal wounds. It's almost automatic. You get 9 mortal wounds out of it. If you're lucky, you'll get 12. Plus whatever it's doing with its psychic powers. It's a pretty good chance that it super smites. So it's, between a smite and a scream and probably a neuroparasite, it's probably doing like 7 to 8 mortal wounds in addition. So it does like between 15 and 20 mortal wounds probably, once it's within 12 inches of you. Importantly, the Psychic Overload goes through walls, so it's, I did say that the Hive Guard are sort of unique in what they do, which is shoot through walls, but the Maleceptor also does that, to be fair. But the Maleceptor just have to hit the closest thing. But it is basically the only way the Tyranids have, besides the Harpy, to engage with stuff that are hiding behind a ruin. And it's pretty good at doing that. One thing that I have been trying with it is putting it in a Tyrannocyte so that it can deep strike. You can deep strike 1 on turn 1. Unfortunately, you can't warp siphon it from a Neurothrope if it's in the transport, because it's off the table, obviously, when in the command phase. But you can still give it +1 to cast, and that's still an 80% to get your mortal wounds off. So you can you have a decent shot at plowing the mortal wounds into somebody the turn it comes in. Yeah, Maleceptor. I underrated the Maleceptor hardcore when I first talked about the Codex last week, because I was like, well, it's Instaphonic Diffusion's not good. It was a defensive thing earlier. It's not a defensive unit anymore. This thing is going to go directly in the middle of the table, and it's going to plow your opponent. It's going to blow up a Land Raider with mortal wounds, basically, and that's insane. Its melee output is not too bad now. It's 3 attacks at 3d3 damage, or at 2d3 damage, or 6 attacks at 2 damage, and that's like fine. It's not good, but it's okay. Yeah, I love me some frickin' Maleceptor chat. What's the combo exactly? So real quick, so just to clarify what the Maleceptor does, every time it takes a psychic test, whether it's a psychic power or an action, and it scores a 7+ on its on the roll, the result of the roll is a 7. It deals 3 mortal wounds to the closest enemy, and that gets smaller as it brackets. So 2 mortal wounds in mid bracket and 1 mortal wound at bottom bracket. You can give it the between 2 high synaptic imperatives. You can give it +1 to cast, and you can let it do its psychic action and cast in the same turn. And then you can spend a CP to let it cast a 3rd regular psychic power. You can do that with Hive Leviathan because you do the regular imperative, and then you cast Hive Nexus on it to get the 2nd imperative. So it's casting 4 times between its action, smite, and then the 2 powers that it knows. You could also channel other powers to it if you need to. And all of them at +1, and then if you Warp Siphon it from the Neurothrope, it is 3d6 drop the lowest. So I actually think it gets to 89% once all of that stuff is online. So it's 89% to score 7 or higher on the psychic test, to be clear. So it's almost a 90% 4 times to do 3 mortal wounds each time you are successful. Plus, then it also gets the effect of the psychic power as well. So that's the whole combo. It basically shoots for 4 times 3 mortal wounds, plus it casts 4 times. Pretty good. What can't flatline a raider? Well, a land raider? Well, most of the time, not mortal wounds, let me tell you that. Unit of 5 or 10 Genestealers? 5 Genestealers every time. I'd never take 10. Mucolid Spore. Garbage. Throw it out. Who cares? We talked about that in the other video. Neurothrope! Let's talk about this guy for a sec. I don't know if we need to. How much do we need to talk about Neurothrope? It's the best unit in the Codex, hands down. Every Tyranid list should have one of them to get your psychic powers off. And even if it's just like, I'm going to cast my High Fleet power, and I'm going to cast Onslaught, and that's it. It Warp Siphons itself and gets +1 to cast, which means most of the powers you're casting on the 90 to 95% reliability. You can also Resonance Barb it, and it's like 99% to get any spell off. I like putting Synaptic Tendrils on mine, so I also get another use of Warp Siphon to put on a Hive Tyrant or a Maleceptor or whatever I want. I built a list with 2. The 2 Maleceptor list had 2 Neurothropes in it, so you get another Warp Siphon. I think Warp Siphon is that powerful of an ability. This little dude's insane. What more do I need to say of that? About that? He is ridiculous. Check with your TOs before doing 2 forecasts of the Maleceptor. 100% ruling that a psychic action counts as a cast. Why would you rule that? It's not how it works. How can you make something -2 to be hit? It just means that you ignore the first hit buff that they have. So if they're +1 to hit, then you ignore that. It's essentially how hit penalties work. All right, let's move on. Big Brain Bug Liz looks awesome. 100% chat. I think the Tyranid Psychic list might be one of the most powerful versions. We got the old One Eye over here. I got old school old One Eye in here. To keep him separate from everybody else. I don't know what to think about old One Eye. I bet he's like probably in B somewhere. I don't know if he's maybe like, he's not as good as a Tervigon, I don't think. I would consider taking a Tervigon. I don't know if I would really take old One Eye. He's character protectable, and he has just 1,000 attacks. But he's almost twice the cost of a regular Canifexes or a Screamer Killer. And he basically only attacks, like, his damage output is better, for sure. But he basically only attacks as much as one Screamer Killer, like, with extra steps. And he's not core keyworded, so you can't put buffs on him. So, like, I don't know. Please, he also doesn't have an invulnerable save. So he just gets killed on the swing back. He's just too expensive, I think, is the problem. And I think that's what I have to say about this guy. If he's like, I don't know, he feels like he should be much cheaper. but then 220 points. But for 220 points, you get a whole Swarmlord. You're like, what, am I gonna take Swarmlord who gives obsec and full rerolls and has like an invuln save and is toughness 8, or I'm gonna take this guy who's like 9 wounds. So I think he's like decidedly mediocre. I think B is a good place for him. He's kind of mid tier. Like I don't know if I would really play him too much, but yeah. He does need to drop points, chat, 100%. Parasite of Mortrex is next. This is another guy I might put in B tier. I'm not really sure where to consider the Parasite of Mortrex. I talked about it in my video about him. I don't think the infestation like ability is particularly exciting. I think it's cool that you can get additional units on the table to like hold objectives and things. And that the more I play Tyranids, the more impactful I find that, because Tyranids have a tough time getting small units in their army. But other than that, the Parasite of Mortrex doesn't have too many special abilities. I do like its ability to dive bomb people and infect them. I think the drive-by stratagem is really good for this little guy. Lets him basically bomb something he moves over with D3 mortal wounds and then infects them with parasites. So you can automatically get the parasite infestation off so that they lose objective secured. That's super strong, but is it 80 points and 1 CP strong? I don't know. I think if this guy had better melee attacks, I would probably rate him pretty highly. But the problem is like he's taking up the points that should be going to your Genestealers, basically. And he has he does less damage. He has this cool utility effect, and he's a synapse creature, which is good to bounce your synaptic links around the table because he's super fast. But it's so hard to fit units in this Tyranid army that he's the first thing I would cut, I think. I would put him in my list and then cut him, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's okay, right? I'm not gonna... He's probably somewhere in, maybe top of C or something. And I'm not gonna be like, oh, this is garbage, and I'm so upset that this is, the new Tyranid model. Nah. But I'm just, probably not gonna put it in my armies. is where it's gonna be at. Yeah, he costs almost as much as a Neurothrope. Yeah, that is a damning comparison. You never want to be compared to a Neurothrope. Oh my god. Yeah. I think it is kind of problematic that it's a character because you give up assassination. If it was a one model, I guess it's screenable, which is cool, but I'm never gonna put it out in front of my army. But I mean, I guess I can. I don't know. Yeah, I think you just hand your opponent assassination on a silver platter when you play these guys. So it's not the worst unit, but I don't know if I would take them. One thing I would take though is a Pyrovore. Here we go. Let's put this guy right up. Oh, this is a Venomthrope. It's probably gonna go to the same place. Let's be real. Pyrovore. Let's put it right up top of A here. I love me some Pyrovores, chat. I think that they're great. I think so. I was kind of having a discussion with myself the other day, and I was like, I'm having trouble with this faction because it's tough to find units that can stand in the middle of the table and survive the turn. But that's a very 9th edition or 8th edition Tyranid way of looking at the game, because in the 8th edition Tyranid Codex you had these big ignore AP warrior blobs, and you had these big these huge Crusher Stampede monsters that would be -1 damage and 4+ invuln and 5+ damage ignore, and just sink 1,000 buffs on them and then make them objective secured, and the game plan was to stand in the middle and have your opponent attack you and then not kill you, and then you kill them back, and that's how it goes. I don't think that's how 9th edition Tyranids play, which is a little tougher because their game plan is going to be not quite as straightforward. But I do think that if you're looking for this thing that just takes the center of the table for a turn, you shouldn't be looking for the thing that takes the center of the table and survives. You should be looking to trade for the center of the table and just have it for a turn and then not be that worried when this thing dies. And it's very much like the Cyberwolf conundrum in Space Wolves, where Cyberwolves are the best unit in Space Wolves simply because they're a one-model unit. I think Pyrovores are just like that in Tyranids. I think that Pyrovores are 30 points a model. They have a solid defensive profile, so they're kind of hard to kill. They're like, your opponent doesn't get to kill them trivially. They have to actually shoot them with a gun that makes sense, like that's meaningful. And they themselves have a gun that's also very good. But you're not that worried if they die because they're only 30 points. It's not like you're committing a Hive Tyrant or a Maleceptor or your Zoanthropes or something to sit in the middle of the table. It's a friggin' Pyrovore, dude, whatever. So this dude's going to run up to the center of the table. He's going to shoot his flamethrower at something and kill some models. And then your opponent's going to, like, dedicate something important to kill him back in order to take that center back, and then you're just going to do it with your second Pyrovore. And I think that is going to be the use case for Pyrovores. I think the toughest part about them is maybe fitting the elite slot in, because I've been finding that my elite slot gets really really claustrophobic, because I'm taking like Venomthropes and Zoanthropes and Tyrant Guard, and only a couple of those get free rolls in. I guess the Tyrant Guard and the Zoanthropes definitely do, but like Maleceptors also go in there, and your elite slot gets it's tough to fill up. But I think that the Pyrovore has a space in there. I think Pyrovores are awesome. I'm gonna take more Pyrovores. Is this live? Yes, chat. We're talking about Tyranids live right now. 6 Pyrovores in a Tyrannocyte? Maybe. I think there's also an argument to be made for an army. You know, there's a potential in the not too distant future that Harlequins become a real problem, and I think Tyranids have some of the tools to deal with an army like Harlequins that has lots of anti-hit roll shenanigans where you're like, well, we have invulnerable saves at the wazoo, and we can't be hit very well. So all of your normal high damage attacks are garbage. You want to shoot a friggin' missile launcher at us? Get out of here. You're probably going to miss, and even if you miss, it'll bounce off an invuln save. And Pyrovores and Maleceptors, like some of the best units in the Tyranid Codex, they just do not give a shit about that stuff. Maleceptors are like, oh, that's cute. You're a Harlequin in a transport. I'm going to kill the transport and then kill you through it. Pyrovores are like, we have a 2d6 flamer and we cost less points than your gun does. And I think there's a universe where the metagame gets so skewed that style of Tyranid list where you take mortal wounds and flamethrowers becomes super solid. And I think that there are situations where you even lean into it and you do things like play Hive Chronos to extend the range of those flamethrowers and give them extra strength and AP with your psychic power and your sub-faction ability. And your Pyrovores start being your anti-tank. You can have 3 of them, like people were saying, in a Tyrannocyte, and they're 3d6 shots, strength 7 with Symbiostorm, AP 3, 2 damage. And that's like some serious business we're talking about now for 90 points. You don't even need to have them in a Tyrannocyte. They could just sit behind a wall in your deployment zone. They're less points. They're almost as much points as like a warrior unit with a warrior unit with a gun is 80, and 3 Pyrovores is 90. For 10 more points, you get Pyrovores instead of warriors, which are like they're a bit worse in melee, okay, but they're like tougher. They have a better gun. Their gun automatically hits. They look cool. I don't know. I think Pyrovores are great. I'm gonna play more of them. That's what I'm gonna do. Pyrovore better than Flyrant? I guess maybe the comparison's a little bit bad. Maybe we knock the Flyrant up. I guess, to be fair, in most of my lists I have a Flyrant, and in some of my lists, or the majority of my lists, I have a Pyrovore. Speaking of which, here are my Pyrovores back here. I printed them off on my 3D printer. Look at these little bad boys. They came out pretty nice, I think. I'm excited to play them. All right, we got Venomthropes next. Venomthropes probably in the same boat. They're probably, we put them in the top 5, right? So they're probably upper in hist here. The Venomthropes are just great. They're a solid melee unit to begin with, and they have a super duper powerful defensive aura. And I think those two things together make them good. They're probably the most cuttable of the, I guess they're probably up above Maleceptors because I take them in more lists. They're probably the most cuttable of the support units. Like, between them and Zoanthropes, like, I guess I could cut Venomthropes more easily than Zoanthropes, but their effect is so good. It's nice to have a unit that they're kind of hard to kill. They're T5 and 4 wounds apiece, so it's kind of difficult to remove 12 toughness 5 wounds on an objective. They're like hiding in the back with -1 to be hit. And so they just get to chill on an objective for a while in the late game. If your opponent has like little objective secured units running in, you could just murder them because Zoanthropes like hit like a truck randomly. They're core keyworded, and I think one thing that's important in the Tyranid list is like finding a sync for your core keywords. So like if you have Swarmlord in your list and like you're getting towards the late game and all you have is big Exocrines and stuff left, like the Swarmlord can't buff the Exocrine, but you have these little dudes who can run around and get full rerolls. And I think that's pretty good. Would I go more than 3-man? Probably not. I think I would. I don't think I have the points left over to get more than 3 Zoanthropes or Venomthropes. But the upside is that you're no longer penalized for only taking 3 Venomthropes. In the old version, if you lost a Venomthrope, they wouldn't affect monsters anymore, and now they just do it regardless. Whoever, they're equal opportunity spore clouders. So I would just do that. Which gun is better on Pyrovores? Don't Pyrovores have to... They just get both, right? I would probably take the 2 damage. No, yeah, they just attack both with both. So it's a weapon profile. So it depends on what you're shooting at. You know, if you're shooting at a bunch of infantry, you take the strength 4. If you're shooting at multi-wound stuff, you take the strength 6. Also, the strength 4 is extra range, so if you're out of range, you can shoot the strength 4 shot anyway. Yeah, you just shoot whatever's good. Anyway, we'll continue. We can talk about Raveners. I like Raveners. I think Raveners are great. The problem is finding space for Raveners in a warrior universe. It's probably going to be a tough one. I kind of want to put them... I think I'd probably put them like top of B, I guess. They're like... They're probably better than Genestealers, right? They don't forward deploy. Their utility's not as good, but their like damage output is awesome. They get a Death Spitter, and they get a billion melee attacks on top of that. All for 30 points a model and a 12-inch move. Plus they're -1 to be hitting melee, so they're kind of hard to kill. The problem is I think they get overshadowed by warriors, and what we'll probably have to do is condense this so that more stuff is in B. Warriors for 5 points less, though, and the important thing about warriors is that they take up a troop slot, and they're objective secured, which is kind of hard to source in Tyranids. So, I think you take warriors more often, but if I had to have, like, gun to my head, if I had to take only one, it might be Raveners. Warriors are just the best troops option. I'm not even that convinced that warriors themselves are that good. They're just good because they are in troops, and your other troops are kind of poopy. They're just, yeah, you have to take troops in your list, and they're the best one. Plus they're Synapse, which is a big deal. Is Kraken a viable competitive Hive fleet? I think probably. You get CP regen and you get 8-inch advance, which is pretty solid. I think Behemoth, Leviathan, probably number 1 and number 2. I think Leviathan number 1, probably Behemoth number 2. But I think Kraken's like a close third. Can you swap adaptives in ITC? Yeah, it happens before the game starts. Or at the start of the first battle round, right? I believe that timing is correct. Let's take a look. Set in detachment rules. Yeah, start of the battle after determining first turn. Yeah, so it's after your list gets created, so you can do it in competitive play, for sure. So yeah, I like Raveners a lot. I have a trouble fitting them in my lists just because maybe I'm just playing more monster oriented stuff right now, and I'll probably like sort of drift towards the higher model count stuff later. And when I do that, I'll probably be taking Raveners. I'm actually printing Raveners right now to play, so I am very excited to play them. How often they find in my list, I don't know. And it's probably like one big unit of 9 to sink your buffs into, and then they just go in and they advance and shoot without penalty with onslaught, and then they charge and they blow something up and then they die. And I think that's probably fine. Yeah, no Red Terror though, chat. I know that question's come up a lot in the last couple weeks. Like, oh, what's Red Terror do? Becomes a paperweight, I guess. Gets proxied as a Tyranid Prime. I think is GW's intention for her. Sad Red Terror. Best loadout for Raveners. I think that it is. I like Death Spitter and Scything Talons. Because they get their claws on their basic attacks, right? Let me take a look here. And it might be a mistake with the in the Codex, and it might be changed later, but they just take a Death Spitter. They don't replace anything with a Death Spitter. So it's just a free roll, right? So you get the basic claws, then you have the option of taking Rending Claws to upgrade your base attacks to AP 4, or having more attacks with Scything Talons. But because you're Strength 5 already, I think you just take the Talons to make 2 extra attacks. So you make 5 attacks at AP 2 and 2 attacks at AP 1, and then you shoot 3 times at AP 2 on the way in. And I think that's what you do. And then you don't really care about losing the reroll once they hit for having a Death Spitter, because you're just going to reroll them with a Hive Tyrant anyway, so it's like, whatever. All right. Next up, we have Rippers. These are terrible. Throw them in the garbage. They're fine when you have space for them in your list. And to be honest, I think if I had the character slot available and I had the CP and I had another use of the Relic stratagem, I would take Gestation stacks on something. So if I have like a Tyranid Prime with no Relic and I have a CP left over, I would take a Gestation stack to spawn Rippers, specifically just to sit on an objective. I would never put Rippers in my list to begin with, though. And I think the Rippers that you spawn from infesting people with parasites is like, that's kind of a free roll, so it's kind of okay. But Rippers themselves, they do nothing for you. They're just not good at all. Don't take Rippers, I guess. Sad. Too bad. We got Spore Mines in here. Bunch of duds. Spore Mines garbage. Get them out of here. Spawn them with Harpies when Harpies bomb people. That's where you get your Spore Mines from. We're probably like this, I guess, on the D tier, but these are all units that I probably wouldn't play to begin with. Kraken Ravener seems super solid with Chapter Master. Yeah, I think so. I think Kraken probably good for Ravener specifically because of that super threat range, right? So they move 20 and then they charge, and the +1 AP is good on all of their little attacks. But yeah, I would say I definitely take them with Swarmlord because you can Chapter Master them. I think it's awesome. We got Swarmlord next. Speaking of which, and that's it. Swarmlord's an interesting case because it sort of feels like a lot of the faction is built around how Swarmlord operates, because you give something full rerolls and he gives something objective secured. They don't have to be the same thing. You could target 2 different things with them. They both have to be core keyworded though. So in your lists with Swarmlord, you have to have a critical mass of core keyword, I think, and you do have to have units that benefit from it. In my opinion, Canifexes do well with Swarmlord because they want the full rerolls and they want the objective secured. The big Ravener and Warrior units want Swarmlord, but if you don't have those units in your army, I wouldn't take Swarmlord. It kind of feels like a switch flips once you get to a certain. It's like probably 3 to 4 of these big like Swarmlordable units, I guess, where you suddenly want to be taking that guy. He's not good enough without having things to buff, though, in my opinion. His like survivability has actually probably decreased on the whole. At least out of Crusher Stampede, because he's not -1 damage anymore. But the Blade Parry ability is just like hot garbage. It's way worse than having a 3+ invulnerable save in melee. Unless your opponent is like a Redemptor Dreadnought and they only have like 5 attacks at like 6 damage or whatever. Like in that situation, the ability is good. But if you're being attacked by anything else, it's so bad. Usually your opponent will have an offhand weapon, so like Emperor's Adeptus Custodes have Misericordias on everything, right? So they just stab you with the knife, and if you fail an invulnerable save against the knife, it eats your blade parry, and now you can't parry their multi-damage attacks. It's like so frustrating. It's such a frustrating rule. His melee profile is pretty okay, but he doesn't have a pincer tail to reroll a hit roll, so he doesn't reroll hits at all. But he still has a billion attacks, and you can reroll his wounds, and I think that's fine. So he's like, by himself, he's like, he's not good enough to be included, but it's not like he doesn't pull weight. As soon as you have the things in the army that he wants to buff, I think he becomes very good. And so I guess he's sort of the definition of like mid-tier, right? He's somewhere like right in the middle. Because I wouldn't take him in every list, but the lists he is in are very solid. And I think that's a good place for Swarmlord to live, in my opinion. I think I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. Let's talk about Termagants. I think Termagants are terrible. Throw them in the garbage. They're too expensive. They're 7 points a model for a dude with an Imperial Guardsman with a slightly better gun. They can't double move. It's just not good. They do have cool synergy with the Tervigon, but whatever, man. I don't know if I would take both of them together. It's sort of whatever. Having Ultramarine Dread Spam and local meta and being incapable of rolling 3+ vulnerable saves means you're more than happy for the new Blade Parry. Yeah, I guess that does help for sure. But if your opponent's not and even in those situations, right? Your opponent charges Swarmy with like the Tech Marine or something, and he's like, ping you with the the Mechadendrite, and you're like, okay, I guess my Blade Parry's gone, cool, sick, and then you get killed by a Dreadnought. It's so stupid. That role's frustrating to me. It's very annoying. The Toxicrene's next. I've talked a little bit about how I think the Toxicrene's I think it's a defensible choice in a lot of situations. I think it's probably it's on the whole probably worse than a Haruspex. It's probably around C tier. I think that because its attacks are better in very narrow situations, like against one wound, high impact stuff. It's better where the +1 to wound makes sense. But the Haruspex having 2 damage attacks is going to be better most of the time. Although the Toxicrene does have its cool secondary effects. It does have that aura of -1 to hit, and it has a fight last aura. And those are all pretty good, but if I were to pick between the two, I would probably pick a Haruspex most of the time, unless I was trying to beat something very, very specific. I do like that the Toxicrene has a role. It's not just sort of worse than most other melee monsters, but I don't think it's better than one of the more generalized guys, which is not awesome. MSU Termagant squads to hold backfield objectives. So here's the thing with Termagants, right? You're like, oh well, what if we just use them as our objective holders because they're so cheap? Except warriors are 5 more points. So for 5 more points, you get 2 more toughness +1 save. You lose a single wound on the whole, but you're dramatically better in melee. Your gun is significantly better. It's an additional AP. It's 6 extra inches of range, and you make basically the same number of attacks with +1 ballistic skill. And your synapse, so you can synaptic link to people. There is never a situation where you would take Termagants over warriors. Not even one. Because warriors are better in almost every single way. And you're like, well, they're multi-model units, so high damage can kill them. But warriors have a 1 CP -1 damage. So it's not even that big of a difference if you get hit by 3 damage weapons or something. Stupid. It's terrible. Oh no, also I forgot the Moloch. Alright, we'll fix that. We'll fix this we'll fix it in post chat. It'll be okay. We'll figure it out. We figure out Moloch. We're missing Moloch and Pyrovores right now? Yeah, alright, that's fine. We'll get it. We'll do them at the end, chat. Don't worry. If Swarmlord gets to choose what's a Blade Parry, then that ability's way better. Way better, for sure. I think he should be able to choose what's a Blade Parry, but he can't, so it is what it is. We got Tyranid Prime next. Let's talk about Tyranid Prime. I like the Tyranid Prime, but I have a tough time fitting him in my army, and that's sort of what I have to say about him. He's probably somewhere in the mid-tier. He's probably somewhere in here. It feels kind of weird to to judge specifically units like him, because I don't know. I think his effects are really good because, you know, he can give you exploding sixes in the shooting phase, which is really good, especially for your big monsters that don't get other buffs. So stuff like Exocrines, right? Exocrines and Harpies, having access to that exploding sixes outside of the Exocrine stratagem means that you have, especially in High Fleet Leviathan, you potentially multiple turns for the mathematical equivalent of +1 to hit, because exploding sixes and +1 to hit math out to be about the same. And that's a big deal for something as big and as sort of ponderous as one of those big shooty bugs. Reroll once to hit is also a solid effect because you can stack it with any of your other rerolls. The issue is, and plus he himself is not really a slouch. He's not very good at melee, but he has a sick gun. He can take a Venom Cannon, which is awesome. For free, by the way. It's just a free roll, which is super good. But it's 85 points is like such a tough pill to swallow. Especially like we're talking about Genestealers and stuff where we can't. It's hard. Like Genestealers are so good and so powerful and like such a crucial tool for the faction, and it's so hard to fit those in the army. And then like you're talking about the Space Marine Lieutenant in here as well, who has a bunch of like sort of ancillary support effects. He also he comes in for free basically in your HQ slot, so he doesn't take up an HQ slot, which is good if you have Tyranid warriors. Woo. We dodged a bullet there, but the points is what really gets me, and every time I have a list with a Tyranid Prime in it, I enjoy his effects, but it never feels quite as efficient as a list with just more punchy stuff. And so I think he's like somewhere in the middle, which is fine, I guess. What I'm saying is the bugs that no one has been using in the last year are now the bugs to use. The bugs that we were all using have dropped down to lists that probably won't play. I mean, like, no, not really. Just Hive Guard. Otherwise, like, Canifexes went up and then everything else must have stayed the same. I actually think in terms of like a transformative change that this Codex update, it was actually not that big of a deal. Do I think the Leviathan's psychic power is misplaced? Find that if it would be a general overall power, it makes choosing a Hive Fleet more difficult. Maybe. I think if it was a general power, you'd never go Leviathan, though. You'd be like, I get transhuman warriors, and you can choose between transhuman warriors or like Obsec on your entire army, like half your army, basically, from Behemoth. I would almost never play Leviathan, I think. Assuming that the Leviathan supplement's gone. If the Leviathan supplement is in there, you just always play Leviathan regardless, because it gives you an entire book of extra strats. But if in the universe where there's no Leviathan supplement, if the Leviathan didn't have their psychic power, I don't know if I would take them. Their Warlord trait is okay, but their relic is garbage, and their stratagem is too situational to ever really see play. Would Termagants be Predator if their profile and points didn't change? Yes, 100%. If they kept 6-up save and the shitty gun and they were 5 points a model, I would rate them much more highly. Because they would be 25 points less than a Tyranid Warrior unit, right? And then the comparison's not there. Plus they're higher model count, so they can scream better. Yeah. Alright. So we'll talk about the Trygons and stuff. I did forget the Moloch chat. I apologize. I don't think I have an image of the Trygon Prime because I don't think there's one on the GW website. So we'll just have to decide which one is the Trygon Prime. We'll have the darker one be the regular Trygon, and then the lighter one be the Trygon Prime. How's that? So we'll talk about regular Trygon first. I don't know if I love this guy. I think that the other... Let's take a look at his datasheet, because we didn't look at his datasheet in the other review because I didn't have it at that point. They did move to fast attack out of heavy support, which is nice because the Tyranid heavy supports tend to be pretty solid. But he's a boatload of attacks. They're 2 damage each, which is like okay for 145 points, and you probably have to upgrade him with adrenal glands. The issue is that I think you're kind of paying a lot for the ability to deep strike, and he doesn't have any buffs to his charge roll, right? So you have to like build this wombo combo out of getting this dude to charge out of deep strike, and if you do, you're like, oh cool, what did we get? And we got like a Haruspex, right? Like, I'm not even taking a Haruspex in my list normally. So why would I take like a bad Haruspex that you have to set up like a 2 CP wombo combo to charge with? I don't like them. I don't like them. I do like, there is the ability to deep strike your troops options with your Trygons and your Trygon Primes. But I think that in general, I would just be taking a Tyrannocyte. I think Tyrannocytes are better than Trygon. So I would put Trygon like probably D-ish, I guess. Trygon Prime is like fine, I guess. Right now it can't be upgraded with adaptive physiologies, and I think that's a problem. If it can take an adaptive physiology, so you can give it a 4+ invuln, and then you can kit it out with relics and warlord traits, I think it's defensible. I think, like people were pointing out in the last week's episode, I think Seer Hive is good on this dude because he has 1,000 attacks and making them all automatically wound is like pretty sweet. Being able to maybe put defensive technology on him with 14 wounds is pretty cool too. So I think he's a more defensible pick than the regular Trygon. If that's the case. If you can't upgrade him with an invulnerable save, then all you have is this very expensive character who gives up assassination points and does nothing better than a regular like Hive Tyrant. So like, whatever. He's 125? Well, Moloch is 125, right? I don't know if a Trygon's 125. I guess I could look at my other codex, right? I still don't think I would take that over a Moloch, actually. I think Molochs are cool. I'm kind of in on Molochs, I think. I think I'm probably going to rate Molochs pretty highly when we talk about them. Let's look at my downloaded codex. It's a pretty rare, mistake on Wahapedia. No, Trygon's 145, chat. Yeah, what are you talking about? Get out of here, chat. How dare you? How dare you question Wahapedia, chat? You sneaky dogs. Get out of here. What's wrong with you? Look at this, 145. All right, I'm not listening to you guys anymore. So I would consider a Prime more highly than a regular Trygon just because of like the ability to give him relics and warlord traits, which is kind of cute. But I think he's like he's a Broodlord for me basically. I don't know if I would really super highly consider them. Yeah, that's true. You can upgrade him with the relic Adrenal Gland for the better charge. Like a 7 in charge, I think is okay, maybe, because you can do he can shoot you with this gun and then unlock his the 3d6 drop lowest charge. So that's like a wombo combo you can get out. But then he doesn't have any, offensive buffs. So it's a trade-off, right? Like either you're spending the time to try to like pheromone trail him in, and then you're doing the charge bonus strat, or you're taking and then his damage output's better, or you're taking the charge bonus relic, and then his damage output's worse. And I don't know, like 12 2 damage attacks is like pretty good, but it's not like super exciting because so much stuff is -1 damage right now, and he's only weapon skill 3. We should keep in mind. So like he misses a bunch too, and he doesn't reroll. You can't put rerolls on him, so he's just like, he hits on average 8 times. And even if he can, like with Seer Hive, he could potentially do 16 damage, and that's pretty sick. But even attacking like, a T8 something, and he's +1 strength, he can go to strength 9 if you play Behemoth, so he's winning on 3s. So he converts like maybe 6 attacks, and they save 1, so he does like 10 damage. That's like okay. But are you going to spend like, it costs you a bunch of CP, and 190 points to do that? I don't know. I guess you're rerolling wounds. on him, so his wound rolls are a little bit better with Voracious Appetite. But that's a lot of time and effort I could be spending on putting a Hive Tyrant into whatever I'm doing that on, and that I don't have to do any of that stuff. Do I remember those glorious few months of Crusher Stampede Leviathan before Knockwound, where Lictors were finally useful and not OP? Yeah, I did. I never played Crusher Stampede in that time though. I always played Harry Dan. I was so heavy on Harry Dan. Oh yeah, Searhead doesn't even work on Vehicles Monsters. Yeah, you're right, chat. That's true. Yeah, that's a good call out. That's so easy to forget because it's such a mediocre relic. Let's talk about Gargoyles next. I think Gargoyles are a really good troops option. The problem is that I have trouble fitting them in my list. I probably should take them though. I think they're like Genestealers. They feel like Genestealers to me. They're probably like one step above Genestealers, where I feel like I should be taking them more, and I very rarely have the opportunity to, because they're 80 points a unit, which is a little pricey. But they're so voluminous, it's a kind of a big deal, because their bases are huge, which means that the footprint of this unit, this 80-point little unit of idiots, is enormous. So they screen super duper well. Plus, you can pick them up with Encircle the Prey. They're super fast, so they can run into like middle objectives or side objectives and just stand on them all game. I think Gargoyles are really good. It's just like awkward to consider taking them instead of Warriors, because they're more expensive than Warriors, and they're like easier to kill and they don't hit as hard, but they're just super fast. And I think I should be taking them. That's what I have to say about that. I think they're good. So there is a current, I know some people are talking about, there is, I believe, a current problem with Encircle and the big wormy boys, because the big wormy boys can't be targeted by Encircle the Prey. Because it targets it targets burrowers, and they don't have burrowers keyword. They have a different keyword. They have burrower keyword. So that would need to get changed, which, as we've seen from Games Workshop's ability to FAQ things, once the Codex gets released, we probably have to wait a month before that gets changed. So for at least like a month after the Codex comes out, they're probably not going to be able to encircle, which is going to suck. Super sad. Could I rate the Hive Fleets fast? I think I'll do a video rating Hive Fleets, chat. I don't think I want to talk about the Hive Fleets today. We're talking about units today. The Gargoyles die to las gunfire? Yeah, that's fine. But, like, I mean, this whole faction dies to las gunfire. Like, we'll get there eventually. So they'll kill them. I believe in them. Tyrannocyte is next up. I think the Tyrannocyte's great. I think it being a real drop pod and have real transport keywords, so there's no weirdness with disembarking your big monsters, is awesome. I'm a little upset that it can't transport Tyrannofexes. Because, like, why? Why can't it transport a Tyrannofex? That's stupid. But I do think that it is just fine. I think if you're deep striking something, I think it's more efficient than taking, like, a Trygon and doing the Trygon strat. It does it on turn 1, so you can nuke people turn 1 with it. You can do, like, super cool Alpha Strike stuff. And it has 5 Desperators on it, and it's 100 points. I think I don't. It's not. It's like a it's a tech piece. It's not really a unit in and of itself. Like, I'm not really rating it on the profile and the datasheet. I'm rating it on how useful being able to deep strike turn 1 is, and I think it's certainly useful. I don't know if I would put it like, I don't know. It's not for every list, because you're not just going to take them on their own merits. You're going to take them depending on what else is in your list. So it's like probably thoroughly mediocre. That's a super tough one to get in there. Tyrannofexes. Is it overcosted? It's 30 points. So if you compare it to a regular drop pod, right? It's 30 points more because it's 70. Regular drop pod 70 and it's 100. But its guns are better and it moves, so it can't be pinned. So you don't get the downside of a drop pod. And I think that's totally fine. Like, it's probably not as good as a drop pod because you want to be spending less points on what it does, but the things that it does aren't bad. So I think it's I think it's probably fairly costed. I would rather see turn 1 deep strikes overcosted rather than undercosted. I would rather not see them in the game, but if they are in the game, I would rather them be a little bit more expensive. We got Tyrannofex next. I don't really rate Tyrannofex, unfortunately. I think there's a universe where he's okay, but I think that his damage output has been unnecessarily hamstrung. I think he's probably like here-ish. I think there's a universe. Maybe he's slightly above the melee monsters. I think he's maybe there. There's a universe where you take an acid spray, I think. There's also there's a silly combo with the Fleshborer Hive because you can give the Fleshborer Hive +1 attack. You can give it, if you're playing Chronos, you can give it extra range and +1 AP. So you can go to 34-inch range and gets +1 AP at 17. So it goes to Strength 7, AP 2 with Symbiostorm, which is like super cute. But also, who cares? He's like 170 points. He takes the entirety of all of your combos for in a CP for an entire turn. And then he shoots you with a bunch of 1 damage attacks, and you're like, okay. Like, he doesn't even kill most units that are T7 with like all that stuff going on, right? Like, he shoots a Dreadnought, let's say. He hits if you exploding sixes that turn, which you should have, he should hit 25 times, and then he wounds like 13, and they save like 4. So he should deal like 9-ish to a Dreadnought. But that's not even a profile you're worried about shooting. Plus, it costs you psychic power and a strat, and your opponent kind of has to like lean into it. So I don't really like him, I think. If I were to take one, I think I would take the Flamethrower, because I think Flamethrowers are powerful. And it would be a situation like we talked about earlier where like you're worried about something like Harlequins that's hard to pin down and is worried about that profile, and this dude shooting 9 Flamer attacks into them every turn is like a real problem for them. That's where I would take this dude. But his damage output for his points cost is way too low. Plus being, one thing that I hadn't really considered when I was initially building lists for this faction is being one of the 15+ wound monsters, so everything besides Canifexes basically, and Hive Tyrants, is a real big downside because you bring it down for an additional point. So this dude being this idiot who has to like run into the middle of the table in order to shoot his gun, giving up 3 points for running it down is a pretty big deal. It's bad for the Maleceptor too, but it's less bad because it feels like the Maleceptor does more damage consistently. Like, we're talking about this combo that can shoot a Dreadnought for 9 wounds, and we're like, ooh, how cool that you can do with this thing. That, you know, has to roll to hit. And a Maleceptor is like, well, I do 20. So, no big deal. And they can't even save against it. So. Yeah. Bleh. Tyrant Guard. Tyrant Guard they're another weird one. I think they're probably like, I take them a lot, so they're probably up here. But also, maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. I like double Tyrant so much that I always take Tyrant Guard. And I think the rule of thumb is that if you have 2 Tyrants, you take Tyrant Guard. And if you have 1 Tyrant, you just hide him behind a building. But Tyrant Guard allow you to project the threat of your Tyrants much farther, which means for, like, especially flying Hive Tyrants, their threat range is super far. Because the Tyrant Guard are behind a building in the middle of the table, and the Hive Tyrant's 3 inches in front of them, plus a 2-inch base. Plus, that dude himself threatens like 25 inches. So he threatens like into your opponent's deployment zone top of 1, and can't be shot. And I think that's super duper strong. The Tyrant Guard themselves don't really do anything though. And again, if I were only taking 1 Hive Tyrant, or maybe even 0 Hive Tyrants, there's no reason to take them. I think it's only lists where you have 2 or more Hive Tyrants I would consider it. And in those lists, it's almost automatic because it's not like they're useless. They still have a bunch of attacks each. They're 6 attacks each when they're standing next to the Hive Tyrant. And they're core keyworded, so they can sink your buffs into them if you need to. They're infantry keyworded, so they can do actions and stuff. Like, it's useful to have another unit on the table. They're pretty hard to kill. They're T6 with a 2+ save. It's like pretty reasonable defensive profile. But I would not take them outside of the situation where you have Hive Tyrants. And I think that's fine. But Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can, bump, like, their effect is so good, and it's not like you're taking a useless unit. So I don't know if I can rate them more highly, but there are situations, like, there are many situations in the game where I just simply wouldn't take them because their effect isn't required. So I don't know. I guess they're in B tier. I guess they're right in the middle. Yeah, if you have 2 Hive Tyrants, you just do it. Controversial opinion, don't like Tyrant Guard at all, even with Bodyguard? Well, the problem is, like, if you don't have Bodyguard, I wouldn't take Hive Tyrants at all. Well, that's not true. I would maybe take one. But I think that it's hard to evaluate each component of the combination individually. Because Hive Tyrants are very good, but they're only very good when they can project their threat range very far without being in danger themselves. And they only do that with Tyrant Guard. So if Tyrant Guard don't have Bodyguard, I would take like 0 to 1 Hive Tyrants. And with Tyrant Guard, I would only take Tyrant Guard for every 2 Hive Tyrants. So it's like, I think Tyrant Guard make Hive Tyrants fieldable in multiples, but the reverse isn't true, I guess. It's weird. I don't know. They have one role and they're good at it. So I don't know. I think they're right in the middle there. I think that's fine for them. I think they're good. I always take them if I have 2 Hive Tyrants, and I think that's probably going to be continued. Issue with Tyrant Guard right now is there's still a fair bit of indirect fire. Not indirect fire that kills Tyrant Guard, though, right? Like, and to be fair, the indirect fire that does kill Tyrant Guard has to waste so much time doing it that they've gotten their value anyway. Like, smart missile systems are not going to kill a Tyrant Guard unit. Not for a while, right? Like, their AP, assuming they're not in Monka range, they're AP 1. So you're saving on 3s into a -1 to hit effect, and they're wounding on 5s. So, like, SMS is going to take ages to kill 3 Tyrant Guard, and you have to kill all 3 for it to matter. So, like, I don't know what other indirect kills them. You don't have to worry about Hive Guard shooting them. Even if Hive Guard were still playable, you wouldn't shoot them at Tyrant Guard, because the Tyrant Guard would be on a line of sight turn 1. Like D cannons maybe, but then your D cannons aren't shooting the rest of your army, so it's a win-win anyway. Night Spinners are maybe gonna kill them. Like, I guess it's just Night Spinners, but they're still saving on a 4. It probably takes like. Does it even do 3 Night Spinners even kill a unit of Tyrant Guard in one shooting phase? Like, I don't know. I don't know if they do. Yeah, I guess D cannons, but you can also you can couch your threat range a little bit. And I think if the D cannons shoot the Tyrant Guard, I think that's okay for you. Because you typically will have other stuff that they want to shoot at, right? There's usually a Maleceptor, or there's Zoanthropes or something that's going to threaten those D cannons. So you can position your Tyrant Guard in such a place that they have to expose their D cannons to shoot at them, and then you get to shoot their D cannons with an Exocrine. Plus, if they're shooting the Tyrant Guard, you get to charge the D cannons with your Tyrant. I think it's okay. I think that's a win for you. I think you're doing it. You're really living the dream. And if you're one of those people if you're taking Shard Gullet, the relic Venom Cannon, that dude just rips 3 D cannons off the table instantly. That guy's sick of the D cannon matchup. Because they're run up and shoot your Tyrant Guard, and that just kills an entire unit of them in one shot. Night Spinners don't kill 1 on average. It takes 2 Night Spinners to kill 1. Yeah, so the Night Spinners, assuming you're in Venomthrope range, right? Oh, no, they're going to take Crystal Targeting Matrices, so they don't even care about that. So they shoot 7 times on average. They hit, say, 5, right? Maybe there's a Strands of Fate in there. And then they wound 3 to 4, and you save 2. So they kill 0 to 1 probably, right? I think they might kill 1 on average if they have the correct Strands of Fate rolls to buff themselves a little bit. That's what I have to say about that. I think Tyrant Guard are okay. All right, let's talk about Warriors. Warriors are the best troops option, but I'm gonna come out with a steaming hot take here, chat. I don't think Warriors are good, but in context, I think they're very good because we don't have any other good troops. The Tyranid Codex has been it's been a wild ride because back in the day we used to have the best troops in the game. You have Ripper Swarms, which are cheap and could deep strike. Warriors were hard to kill and were pretty like super efficient, and you could put bioweapon bonds on them. Genestealers did 1 billion attacks and were like they hit like a fucking truck. Termagants were just a bunch of models that were super cheap, and now you just have Warriors, and Warriors are expensive and slow, and that's sad. I would basically rather take Raveners than Warriors, but I have to take Warriors because I need a Synapse creatures to Synaptic Link, and I need troops options to have troops options. Plus, they're objective secured, which is good. So Warriors are like a tax on the Tyranid army now, which is kind of sucks. So I think you probably put them like top of B or something. I guess they're like better than Genestealers, right? They're probably there. But and I'm gonna take them all the time because I have to take troops, but I don't want to. I want to take cooler stuff than Warriors. I think their gun is good. Death Spitters are a super solid profile. Their melee is very strong. But they're never gonna you're never in a situation where you're gonna get into melee. And oftentimes, if they expose themselves to shoot, they just die on the swing back. And if they're your thing that's holding an objective, you lose that objective, and that sucks. So in order to use their gun, they can't be a backline objective holder, and they're too slow to use their melee. So it's like their profiles, their stat increases don't matter, basically. There's like ancillary situations in which you get to shoot their gun, and it feels really good because their gun's awesome. But on the flip side, they're 8 points more than they used to be. I would honestly rather have access to old Warriors with the old stats, where they were T4 and 17 points a model and had shitty melee attacks. Because to me, it doesn't feel like the Warrior's ability to punch stuff actually matters at all. The Synaptic Link is good. And I think that is that's the real power behind the Warriors, I think. Although most of the time I find it that my midboard Synaptic Link is Zoanthropes, so I don't necessarily need it. But Warriors are going and running and trying to grab objectives and stuff, but whatever. Gargoyles are troops now, chat. But they are more expensive than Warriors. So if you're trying to shave points places, then you're probably going to take Warriors, which is what I found. And like I said, I probably should be taking more Gargoyles, but the Warriors are just cheaper. They're just cheaper. Is a 9-man Warrior Squad and a Leviathan a nightmare backline anchor? If you have a 9-man Warrior Squad and they're sitting in the back, then you're spending 250 points on something that is not fighting your opponent. And this Codex is not efficient enough to be able to do that. If you have the... I don't dislike the 9-man Warrior blob, but you have to... It has to be like up in front and shooting at people, I think. In which case you'll find that, yeah, you know, for almost 9 points a wound, even T5 is not really survivable enough for the unit to stick around. They get ripped up pretty hardcore. Are there any Synapse creatures who are made good because of their Synaptic Link ability? I think maybe the Maleceptor, because it combos with its Synaptic Link ability so well. I think Zoanthropes are a good unit baseline, and they are included in every army because of their Synaptic Link ability. I think that's for sure. So they're just missing the Synapse keyword? Yeah. That is weird. I think it's okay, though, because they have the ability. A Melta team can wipe them out? Yeah, I mean, if you're taking the 9-man, right? So, the 9-man bricks are a little bit different, because if you're in Leviathan, you're giving them the invuln save from Zoanthropes. So, it's not, you know... you have to combo out the 9-man unit. You have to put all of the buffs on them. Be like, I'm -1 damage with the strat. I'm catalysted. I'm a 4+ invuln. And I'm -1 to hit from Zoanthropes. And at that point, plus you're transhuman, a big Melta blob is actually going to bounce, probably. He's going to kill 2 guys. But Like, what do you do back to them? You shoot them with some Death Spitters? And you're like, ah, we've killed 3 Space Marines. Sick. We're really doing it now. Woohoo! I don't know. Meh. Big meh. So, I don't know. That's where I put Warriors. I'm going to try a list at some point alongside this testing. I'm going to try a list that just leans into Warriors super hard, and we just take like dozens of them. I built a list that had 45 Warriors in it, and I think it's like not terrible. Just because of like the volume of wounds and the amount of shooting that comes back at you, right? I think there's an Exocrine in the list, I think. So like you get hit by an Exocrine and it's just 1,000 warrior attacks. Plus you have there's a Tyranid Prime in that list, so you get the Prime Synaptic Link or Imperative to explode 6s. So like maybe that list is good. I definitely can see myself being wrong about Warriors, but so right now they're the dud in the army list. Like I bring them anyway because I have to have troops, but I'm never happy about it. Let's talk about Zoanthropes. We played Zoanthropes up here. There you go. Probably better than Harpy, I think. Harpy's in lists sometimes. Zoanthropes should probably always be in your list. The Synaptic Link, or the Synaptic Imperative is too strong. 4+ and vulnerable save on all your monsters is really good, especially for like Exocrines and stuff. You can also hold it on turn 1 sometimes, and then the turn that the Exocrines come out and play, you get like 2 turns of shooting with them because your opponent just doesn't attack them. Same with the Harpy. The Harpy like hides in the back corner turn 1, and then turn 2 like you 4+ it and then it runs away, depending on what your opponent is threatening you with. Plus, if you're in Leviathan, which oftentimes you are, the Hive Nexus lets you 4+ invulnerable save anything, so it's like you have a super strong version of Synaptic Barrier from Crusher Stampede, but it's all the time on whatever unit you want. It's not just a single model. I think Zoanthropes are awesome. On top of that, they also get a cast, so you can support cast with them sometimes if you just need another cast of something. They theoretically should Synaptic Link. They don't have the Synapse keyword, but they probably should because they have the Synapse ability. And they their smite is crazy. Their smite is ridiculously strong. It's possible to smite while suffering perils, which is so good. You can Snake Eyes your Psychic test and still smite with this unit because they get +1 to cast for each guy remaining in the unit, which is super dumb. And then they hit for D3 +3 mortal wounds. If you super smite, which is really, especially if you have any other buffs on them, so the Neurothrope Imperative or Warp Siphon, any of that stuff, they have like a greater than 50% chance to super smite. So D6 +3 mortal wounds. Whoa, that's crazy. And they're also a good late game smite, like late phase smite too, which is what they used to not be at all, because you'd have to smite with the Zoanthropes first, because if the Zoanthropes failed their smite, they did nothing. But now the reliability of their smite is so high that you can smite them like second or third in the lineup, and even if they need a 7 or an 8, it's probably only like a 4 or 5 on the dice because they have their bonus to cast is so high. Yeah, Zoanthropes are fucking sick. How many Zoanthropes and Neurothropes? I think you should start each list with 1 of each, and then you go from there. I built a list with 2 of each, and I'm not sure about it, but I'm going to keep playing it to see how I like it. The second Zoanthrope unit could maybe get cut. But it's so many mortal wounds, I don't know. It's like, it just laser beams you for like 1 billion mortals, and it's so good. So, I haven't decided yet, is my answer for that. Is it super dumb or super flavorful? I mean, why can't those be the same thing? What's the difference, really, chat? What's the difference between dumb and flavorful? Would I run Zoanthropes and Crusher Stampede if it's still legal? I would run Zoanthropes extra hard in Crusher Stampede, for sure. Because the 4+ invulnerable save gets even better if you have a bunch of giant monsters. If your entire army is like Canifexes and Hyrule and stuff, Zoanthropes are way better. They're still good if even all they're affecting is warriors, because a 5+ invulnerable save is much better than a 4+ armor save. But a 4+ invulnerable save on your entire Crusher Stampede army on turn 1 is super good. It's super strong. Yeah, I think, yeah, Zoanthropes, excellent. Excellent in Crush. If Crusher Stampede remains legal, they would be excellent in Crusher Stampede. Can I explain the strengths of Maleceptors? I mean, you could just check out the Maleceptor section. I talk about it a lot there. I'll have a video on them later too. We can talk about the whole combo about Maleceptors. They shoot you for 20 mortal wounds. It's pretty good. Basically, is the synopsis. If you put a bunch of buffs on them. They put D3+3 in a minimum squad, but a 6-man is often D6+6. Don't they cap on the number of mortal wounds they do, right? Let's double check here. Yeah, they cap on mortal wounds, Chad. So having 6 Zoanthropes actually does nothing for you. It just gives you, your smite is more reliable. So you're often doing D6+3 because if you have like a full unit of 6, your super smite goes off on 5, which is pretty automatic. But you're not doing any more mortal wounds. So I would probably not take more than 3 in a unit, and I would take a second unit of 3 for sure. All right. So we should talk about the stuff that I forgot to put on the list. I think I can just add it in post here. Let me find some pictures of them. Do I have any in my sheet that I just forgot to upload? And I guess we can smooth out the curve a little bit here. Like, Foot Tyrants are probably B tier. We could just do this, right? And then we're pretty even. Even Stevens. We'll probably do that. That feels pretty solid, right, Chad? We got a nice bell curve going. And then we can sub in our other friends. So what haven't we talked about? Moloch. Let's add a Moloch. Okay, we got a Moloch. Here he is. Ooh, he's so big and fancy. We got a Moloch in there. Let's add a Pyrovore. Do I have a Pyrovore somewhere? I guess I gotta find a Pyrovore. Sorry, chat. Let's find the old Pyrovore. So the old Pyrovore is the one that I have. Rogue Trader Pyrovore. So I have this one. Look at this cutie pie right here. Those are my Pyrovores. Let's throw that up in there. Oh, Spore Assist. Yeah, chat. Spore Assist. So I'm gonna be honest, chat. I haven't looked at the Spore Assist enough, so we'll take a quick gander at the Spore Assist because I don't think we talked about it in the review. And I think it's probably playable. Let me download a picture of a Spore Assist. I can't. No. And okay, so we need Pyrovore. There he is. He's so funny. That was so derpy. Oops. There he is. Boom. All right, here's all our extra buddies. Our extra friends over here. Okay, let's talk about these guys real quick. So I'm gonna take a look at the Sporosis data sheet because I briefly read it, and I'm gonna make sure I don't misspeak about it. So they are Fortification BFR, right? They are. So they still get all of the downsides of fortifications, which is sad. It's super unfortunate. Unfortunately, our icons are going to pop up in front of their datasheet. Go away, icons. Go on the bottom. You live down here now. Thank you. So for 95 points, you get a forward deploy. It still gets restricted by terrain. You have to keep that in mind. But you can remove terrain in order to place it, which is pretty okay. In the new rules, anyway. You can only remove terrain in your deployment zone, though, I think, which is the problem. So sometimes their ability to deploy right up in the front of the table is a little bit sucky. I do think their Spore Mine spawning is actually kind of sick, because they drop the Spore Mines 18 inches away, which is, like, pretty far. For 95 points and a fortification slot, although the fortification network is basically free, so that doesn't really matter. It's probably a little tough to fit them in places. I do think that Synaptic Relay is a pretty big deal because they will push your Synaptic Link chain pretty far. But I think what kills them for me is their defensive profile. If this unit was obnoxious to kill and your opponent like couldn't deal with it before it spawned a bunch of like Spore Mines and did a bunch of stuff, I would be okay with it. But it's like so hard to place on the table on the battlefield, and it's only 10 wounds at T7 with a 4+ save. Like, it just dies randomly. Plus its ballistic skill sucks. Like, why is it so bad at shooting? I don't get it. I don't understand. So, like, your choices are a Spore Assist or, like, 4 Warriors, right? And 4 Warriors have slightly fewer shots. They don't spawn spores, obviously, which is not as good. But they're objective secured and they move. And, like, they're like, I guess, slightly easier to kill or whatever. But they can actually hold objectives, which is a pretty big deal. So, I don't know. I'm not sure I would take these guys, to be fair. Yeah. Probably worse than just an equivalent combat unit, I guess. So I'd probably put them, like... I don't know if I would put them at the bottom. They're, like... I would take one over Ravener, or more over Rippers, probably. I'd probably in here somewhere for Spore Assist. It's not the worst unit in the Codex, but it's not like... It's not good. So you could take a Spore Assist or you could take a Lictor, right? And the Lictor's like, hey, I'm 70 points, so I'm 25 points less, and I can't be attacked. And the Spore Assist is like, oh, they could shoot me and I die because I'm like 10 wounds and 4+ save. And the Lictor's like, hey, I'm untargetable, bro. Check me out. Look at me go. Yeah, it feels okay for me. I'd put it somewhere in there. How dumb did Spore Mines get? I mean, so they don't screen Deep Strikers anymore, which is why I mean, like, the Spore Mine ability is like so much less powerful now, and we can talk about that when we talk about Biovores, right? Because the Biovores are like, hey, we're the guys who drop Spore Mines, and you're like, okay, cool, so you can screen out Deep Strikers, and they're like, no, we don't do that. And you're like, well, what do you do? And they're like, well, they sometimes move block, but in a way that might get eroded to not work anymore. And you're like, oh, okay, so you're useless. Cool. Because the weird part about the Spore Mines right now is that you can move over them with your normal moves, but they still have an engagement range, so you can't move into their engagement range. But that might not be the intention. You might be able to move over them, which means there's a universe where Spore Mines now no longer block movement, which would be super shitty. I do like that Spore Mines do explode if you move within 3 of them at all. So even if you're within 3 and you so like for example, right, there's a Spore Mine here. We'll make the actual the Mucolid Spore. So there's like a Spore Mine here. He's got a 3-inch circle around him. Even if you move in and then move out of that 3-inch area, he will still blow up on you at the end of your movement. And I think that is cool. So they can they actually, like, their ability to do damage is a little bit improved. They can't charge anymore though. So you have to move to them. They can no longer like magnetize themselves to you and then blow up. They'll do it if you are if you charge near them, but the fact that they're almost entirely reactive now, they're not proactive, is like it's less fun. They were super good when you would drop them down. They would have a utility, which is screening, deep strikers, and then also move blocking. And then if your opponent didn't deal with them, they would go do a thing. And now they just stand around and kind of are there. So like, I would never take them in an army. I don't think I would even play Biovores specifically for the ability to spawn Spore Mines. I don't know if Biovores are like super terrible. They're probably better anti-tank than like Hive Guard, or a better indirect fire than Hive Guard. So they're probably like somewhere in here. But they're super expensive. Their regular gun doesn't do that much damage. It's only a 4+ ballistic skill. You can combo them with the Maleceptor Synaptic Link to let them place Spore Mines and shoot their gun, which is nice. But is that worth your Maleceptor combo? That means you're not doing the regular Maleceptor combo. So this unit of like a unit of 3, or I guess like 4-ish Biovores. It's 1 unit of Biovores, right? So there'd be 3 of them. What's their maximum mutant size? Is it still 3? Let's look on the datasheet. So they are, yeah, so it's a unit of 3. So for 135 points, you could have 3 of them, and you could use your Maleceptor link to do to place the Spore Mines and then also shoot your gun. So you're doing like an average of 6 shots, 3 hit, and then they take 3 mortal wounds. Or your Maleceptor could just shoot them for 20. And they both ignore line of sight. So I know which one I would do. 20 is more than 3. So I don't really rate Biovores that much. I think they're probably, like, their utility is fine, but I don't know if it's worth like going through, like, you know, jumping through hoops to get off. The worst part of Biovores and Spore Mines is that you can't move your Biovores 0.1 inch and try to force a screening Spore Mine shot. Well, you just get the Spore Mine now. So in that instance, they are much better at spawning spores than they used to be. Let's be real. This unit, like, they'll just get 3d3 spores for freezies, right? They just do it. They just do it instead of shooting. So the difference is that you don't like plow mortal wounds into somebody and then also like sometimes get Spore Mines. Now you just get the Spore Mine, which is nice. There's no like chicanery involved. But do I want Spore Mines that much? I don't know. I'm not sure I do. I guess like maybe you do. If you can spawn 1 million of them, like maybe it's okay. But whatever. I think your opponent's still going to charge them and move like however long they want to. Plus, you're going to be in a situation where, like, you know, if you go second, right, your opponent has already moved to the middle of the table, so your Spore Mines are no longer useful. If you go first and you have like a bunch of Spore Mine delivery systems and you can drop Spore Mines all over your opponent's front line and they actually are hampered, that's annoying. But if you go second, they're already there, and they're standing in the middle of the table, and they're just going to shoot your Spore Mines before they do anything. So you're like, oh, this sucks. My stupid Spore Mine's cool. I think it's going to be very similar to the previous version of the Codex, where like there's going to be very specific matchups where Spore Mines are a big deal because your opponent has a bunch of vehicles, they get stuck behind walls, they're not super fast, and the Spore Mines are obnoxious to them. But I think those are mostly going to be matchups that you're going to win anyway, because it'll just shoot them with Exocrines multiple times and they'll die. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would jump, you know, bend over backwards trying to get Spore Mines a bunch of times. Lastly, we have a Moloch, this little bad boy. I think a Moloch's awesome, actually, chat. I think it's awesome in Behemoth lists where you're, or not just Behemoth, but any of the Hive Fleet lists, where you're focusing on monsters and you're taking the biomorphology to get objective secured on your monsters and they count as 5 models. And the Moloch is so good with that because this little boy right here can deep strike within an inch of enemies. So you can innately make him objective secured, and then he can orbital strike your opponent and steal an objective from them. And that's fucking rad. If he then doesn't die, and for only 125 points, you're like, hey man, you did a bunch of mortal wounds because you orbital striked my opponents like midline. Then you grabbed an objective and you probably got me Stranglehold or Engage in All Fronts or something. So you scored, it was like a 7-point swing, and you did a bunch of damage for 125 points. That's not the greatest value ever, but it's pretty good. And if your opponent has to deal with this 14-wound piece of garbage that's sitting in the middle of their army, then that's that much less focus that they can put into attacking your important stuff like the 5 Canifexes that you're running at them. So I think in lists of that type, I think Molochs are friggin' sweet. Just because of that objective secured ability. I think that's probably like somewhere here-ish. Like somewhere mid-B tier. Maybe Tervigon level. Like it depends on the list that you're in. But I don't think it's certainly not every list. You do need to have a very specific type. But if you're in that style of list, I just 100% go in there. Was Doublekin and Walkrant addressed? No. Like, was it removed? No. So many arms for hugging. This is many hugging arms. I don't know if I would put upgrades on him though, chat. Like, you know, he's got the access to toxin sacks and stuff like that. But the assumption is that he's dead after he deploys. So I wouldn't be shocked if he just immediately died. So I would try to keep him as cheap as possible for that reason. And you can probably do some chicanery to like get him the Zoanthrope aura when he comes in or something, right? If you hold Zoanthrope until turn 2 or whatever, then he comes in. Although you probably have it turn 1 if you're running that list anyway. Yeah, I don't know if I would put adaptive physiologies on him. I think like maybe Dermic Symbiosis, chat, maybe. If the goal is to eat as many of your opponent's attacks as possible, sure. But you're also then making him, like, making their attacks more efficient because they're attacking something that's more expensive. So, I don't know. I guess there's an argument for it. But I kind of want to keep him as cheap as possible. But I think it's awesome. Moloch or one more Screamer Killer? It depends entirely on the list. If you're not taking the Obsec thing, I don't think I would take a Moloch. But if you are, then I would take a Moloch for sure. He can charge after he comes in. Not if he takes an objective, though. I'm much more interested in that guy taking an objective than him charging and making his 1 damage attacks. Like, he has 1,000 attacks, but they're kind of mediocre. They only hit for 1. And the ability to affect the table the turn he comes in is much more impactful to me. There are going to be situations where you do, like, you trigger your roll 3d6, drop the lowest to charge, and you try to get a charge out of deep strike, and I think like those are pretty fine. But I wouldn't be the focus. The focus would be, for me, would be to score objectives with him. Tried Moloch with Enraged Reserves, 25 points for Death Frenzy. Can you? Well, you can't Death Search him, right? I don't know if that's great. The fight on death is characters only, right? Yeah, it's characters only, chat. You can't fight on death with a Moloch. So don't be doing that. That's not awesome. It makes that frenzy free on something else. I guess. Is that, yeah, that gives you, it gives it to you for free full stop. It's not just, you don't have to target that unit with it. I guess that makes sense, because it... no. Yeah, chat. Yeah, no, you do have to target that model with it. When this model is selected for its epic T stratagem. Yeah, so that combo doesn't really work. Yeah. I don't know about that, chat. General question is objective control better than killing your opponent? It's entirely situational. I don't think it's possible to answer that in general. I think the real answer is somewhere in the middle, because you have to make sure that you have a balance between being able to remove your opponent's assets and being able to keep them off objectives. And I think a unit like a Moloch is cheap enough that it can maintain that balance. So you have a bunch of monsters, and especially in a list that you're going to be obsecking a Moloch in, is probably a bunch of monsters that are running your table of your opponent. And so having this thing, this like big idiot who's 14 wounds, he's not like trivial to kill. So your opponent has to dedicate a lot of their reasonable attacks to kill him, which then pulls focus from the rest of your monsters, meaning that you have more monsters to go kill them later. So not only is he scoring points, but he's also helping you in the attrition battle in general. For the Harpy, do I recommend running double heavy Venom Cannon? 100%, yeah. I think 2 damage is a little bit low, especially right now as we're like staring down the barrel of everything being -1 damage again. I think that you should probably be pushing past the 2 damage level. I don't hate the Strangle Thorns if you're like in a meta game where 2 damage matters, just because the volume of attacks is really nice. But I think generally 3 shots at 4 damage is going to be mostly better. Enraged Regeneration is better on the Maleceptor. That's the... Which one is that one? Enraged Reserves. So Enraged Reserves is a little bit different, chat, because it's kind of the same situation as the Silent King. You only double wounds for your characteristics. You do not double wounds for your abilities. So the... Enraged Reserves doesn't actually help the Maleceptor do more mortal wounds. Because your bracket isn't higher, you only use the higher bracket on your profile. Blake Hahn's wondering if you can smite through Synaptic Link? No, you can't. How did Demacaron do? It's hard to say with Forge World. That's why we're not talking about Forge World right now, because the Forge World stuff is. I'm gonna move our little friends over here. Sorry, guys. The Forge World stuff is liable to change, I think. But I think that's it, right? We hit everything in the Codex. I think this is, I'm pretty happy with this for a tier list. Where do we have? We had Spore Assist in here. We have Pyrovore in here. We had Moloch in here. I think that's pretty solid. I'm pretty happy with that. I think there's some room to change. This is sort of the, so like, this level for me is the stuff that I include. This, Yeah, I mean, we could potentially push like this, maybe. Like, this is the stuff that I include in most of, if not all of my lists. This is like kind of list dependent, but they're in a lot of lists. This is like generic utility that I should be having in all of my lists. B tier is like list dependent, is super list dependent, and then C and lower is very matchup specific, and where I would have to be running a very specific list for that stuff. But I think most of this feels pretty clean to me. Double Flyrant, am I saying, or but double Tyrant, am I doing double Flyrant? I have done double Flyrant. In some situations, I've taken Flyrant plus Swarmlord, I think. I'm not just like settled on which one I like better. It might be double Flyrant, to be honest, because the threat range is really nice on those guys. But Swarmlord plus Flyrant is also very good. Would I consider most of the Forge World stuff contingent on Crusher Stampede staying? Probably. Crusher Stampede is a really big deal for that stuff, for sure. Like, the big 18 wounders are significantly less impactful if they're not -1 damage anymore. How broken would Synaptic Links might be? It would be unreasonably broken. It would be ridiculous. I mean, we talked about how much damage a Zoanthrope unit does. Imagine taking triple Zoanthrope unit and doing that from the backline of your table. Like, through just an idiot warrior or a monster with upgrades. Or like a Parasite of Mortrex, right? A Parasite of Mortrex runs 16 inches, and you link to it, and then you drop like 20 mortal wounds out of it on whatever you want. That'd be stupid. That'd be stupid as hell. Can't do that. Apoyo Hi from Canary Islands. How's it going, man? Thanks for tuning in. What's my ideal army with the new Codex? I don't know if I'm ready to say what I think the best army is. I think every army starts with the Neurothrope and the Zoanthropes and the Venomthropes and maybe 1 to 2 Tyrants, and if you have 2 Tyrants and Tyrant Guard, and then probably 1 Exocrine and like 1 Harpy probably, and then you go from there. And where the rest of the other, you know, like 1,200 points or so of that list is depends entirely on you, I think. You can go like multiple Canifexes and the Moloch and stuff like that if you want to do monsters. You can do Psychic Phase stuff. You could do a bunch of infantry like Warriors and Raveners. I don't know what the best way is. I'm only a couple games in so far, so I don't know if I can really speak to that. R.I.P. Harry Dan if Crusher Stampede leaves us. Yeah, Harry Dan might go the way of the Dodo Dragon, unfortunately. There's really no synergy between him and the Codex, I think. You can give him exploding hits with the Tyranid Prime, and you can give him a 4+ invuln save with the Zoanthropes, but like that's it. You're kind of struggling. I think if he gets a points break, he's probably still playable, but at 700 points, he doesn't do enough damage. But the fact that you can deep strike him for 1 CP instead of having to do the overrun trick means that like he's more reliable than he was, because he's never in danger of being killed, essentially, which is pretty cool. I think that's a good place to start. The awkward part is that his guns are so much less effective. So I would take Harry Dan at like 600 points or 550 or something. In this Codex, but I don't know if I would take him at 700. He's not like unplayable. Maybe it's worth a shot. I don't know. We'll see. It's probably fun more than anything, but I don't know if he's that good. If you say please really nicely, can you swipe through Synaptic Link? Could you imagine? Oh my god. This would be the most busted army in the game if you could smite through Synaptic Link. I'm calling it now. Tyranids would be so good. Ooh, ooh. If we chat as a collective challenge me to win a GT with the first edition Pyrovore model, what do I win if I win a GT with the first edition Pyrovore? Unfortunately, I have a GT this weekend, and I just submitted my list yesterday. If I'd known that, I would have put a first edition Pyrovore in my list. Damn, Chad. Damn. Yeah, losing Bioweapon Bond is very bad for the big monsters. And I think, like I said at the top of the video, I think that we'll probably find a situation where non-core monsters that don't have a super specific role are probably not going to be playable. So they have to be like, they basically have to be able to do enough damage that they don't need buffs to do it. And even so, like an Exocrine is basically gets +1 to hit because of its stratagem anyway. And a Harpy sees around corners. That's a big deal there. And the Maleceptor shoots through walls. And those are like those are the things that those guys do. And if we notice, no other like non-character, non-core monster is in the top half of our ranking, right? It's just Moloch, I guess. And he again does something very specific, like Moloch and Tyrannocyte. So you have to have like a very specific role. You can't just be like, I'm a melee guy. I got a big melee weapon and a gun. You can't do that. I don't think that's good enough. I mean, core keyword was a mistake. Who knew? What a shocker. What if they made Hyrule core? I think, oh my god. If Hyrule were core, that would be ridiculous. No, I think that'd be stupid. We didn't talk about the Forge World stuff, John. That's why they're not on the list. Can a synaptic imperative be used again by a different model? I don't know what that means. Like if you have multiple models with the same synaptic imperative, can you use it? Can you repeat it? No. Like if you have 2 Zoanthrope units, you don't get the Zoanthrope synaptic imperative 2 different turns. We're in a Haruspex with 4+ Inbound and Catalyst through the middle of the game. It drains so much fire, it was ridiculous. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, they're tough to kill. But like again, there is hard to kill as a Maleceptor, and a Maleceptor's not that hard to kill. They're a little bit tougher because they regen and they have a 2+ base, but it's not that much different. Yeah, Hyrules are just a little bit bigger than a Carnifex. Just a little tad, just a tiny bit bigger. Man, could you imagine the universe where Hyrules are core? Oh my god. Ooh. God, you're making me excited, chat. I did talk about some loadouts for the Tyrants. I did, chat. All right, I think we'll probably call it there, chat. We're mostly winding down here. So if anybody has any other questions they want to throw in, go ahead and drop them in there. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. I guess a quick rundown of my favorite Tyrant builds. I don't love walking Tyrants, which is why they're so low. I guess you just take relic cannons on them because that's like kind of the upside is you can take the cannons. I think I like Stranglethorn and I like or Balethorn and I like Shard Gullet. I think those are fine. My favorite loadouts for Flyrant right now are I think I'm converted to the Church of Bone Sword and Lash Whip because you get rerolls to hit and then you have a reroll to wound out of your tail. I think Reaper of Obliterax is super good because your damage output against one wounders is like insane because you basically double damage against one wound targets, and then you also are basically 4 damage against multi-wound targets. And I think I like Maw Claws because you go up to 6 attacks. So I think those are my favorites. Tyrant Guard loadout. I've been playing Scything Talons just for more attacks. I don't think it makes a huge difference, to be honest, what the Tyrant Guard are loaded out with. Like, I think mathematically it's probably pretty close either way, whichever way you go. I would just went for volume on those guys because they're core, and a lot of times at the point that they're in melee, you're going to be giving them rerolls anyway. So the reroll ones they hit from the Lash Whip isn't that good. Specnas. Feel stupid for convincing your wife to name her child Harry Dan. You should have named him Harry Dan instead of Harridan. That way it would have been okay. If Walkrents can run Relic Venom Cannon plus regular Venom Cannon, do they go up in rating? I think they go down actually. I don't know if I like the double cannon. Like, they're just a weird Harpy at that point that like isn't as fast and can cast psychic powers, but they don't do anything in melee. But like the upside of the Walkerins is that they can shoot and then charge, right? But if they can only shoot, then you're like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's fine, but I have no idea. What would I say number 1 unit is in the book? Probably the one at the top of the list. There you go. I also have a video about the best unit in the Codex, so you can look at that one. What is the coolest Tyranid model looks and flavor-wise? Flying Hive Tyrant, chat. Hands down, Flying Hive Tyrant. I love those guys. I love them. What kits am I currently working on? So I got some Raveners. They're actually... I have some pieces behind me. They're on my printer right now, but I'm printing some boys. Some Ravener boys. Oh, this guy's got a little hole in them, I just noticed. That's weird. So I got some of those. I got some Tau on the table, too. So these are some cool battle suits that I printed out. I don't know if you can see them very well. Does that show up on the camera super? It's okay. Looks okay. There's some cool Crisis battle suits. Other kits, let's see. I assembled my Hive Guard, or my Tyrant Guard, excuse me, and so I have to paint them. I was gonna paint. I have my basically my Forge World stuff's all base coated, but I haven't like finished it yet, and I might hold off. So I have to paint Tyrant Guard, and realistically, from the new the stuff I'm playing in the new Codex, Tyrant Guard are the only unit I have to play. I have to paint really because almost everything else is painted for me. So that's pretty nice. So next up on the painting docket is probably Tyrant Guard. Which printer do I use? I have an Elegoo Mars 2. Is what I'm printing with so far. I got it 3 weeks ago. I'm loving it. I finally figured out how to work it so it doesn't like misprint constantly, and they're awesome. Why are Venomthropes so high? Because they have they're good at fighting. They're cheap, 100 points per unit. They're super good at fighting, and they have an insane defensive ability. Or a couple insane defense abilities. They have a fight last. They have the -1 to hit aura, and they punch they hit like a ton of bricks. Caught up in the Crusher Stampede hype and got a Swarmlord inside Tyrannid. Well, Swarmlord's still good. I think like I don't know if I would say like especially Side Tyrannid. Like even with the new Codex, I don't think Side Tyrannid is like unplayable or anything. I think like they still have a flamethrower. You can like Hive Crone can increase the like range AP and damage of their flamethrower or in strength of their flamethrower. Like you could like lead into it a little bit, and it's probably pretty okay. I wouldn't say Side Tyrannid are like terrible or anything. They're certainly not going to be Crusher Stampede Side Tyrannid, but they're not going to be too bad. I wish you could put like Adrenal Glands on them and make extra attacks and stuff. That'd be awesome. Yeah, I would never take upgraded weapons in Tyrant Guard chat. Never ever. The Crushing Claws cost 20 points a model. Too many points. It's ridiculous too many points. Yeah, core on the Venomthropes too is a big deal. I would basically never take upgrades on the Tyrant Guard. The Tyrant Guard you kind of want to be keeping cheap anyway, because your opponent's going to try to shoot them so they can shoot the Tyrants, and you're just losing extra expensive guys. Can I explain how the Warlord trait reroll works for Leviathan? It's a single die. Yeah, it's not. It's a single roll. So if you reroll a psychic test, you roll all of the dice. But if you reroll a hit roll, it's one hit roll, one die. Attacks are according the rules. Treat attacks as being taken sequentially. So you'll make one attack and hit and wound and then save, and then you do the next attack, hit, wound, and save. That's not actually how people play it, because you fast dice roll as described on the fast dice rolling page. But the rules still consider a hit roll not to be all of the dice for all your attacks to roll to hit. It's the roll to hit for a single attack. So you reroll that one attack. Which is, I mean, still very good. Rerolling, I think like rerolling a psychic test and or charge for that guy is pretty good. I actually put it on a Neurothrope for a while to reroll Psychic Test, just in case. Because you never, like, it's always awkward to be like, you know, like, I don't really want to spend a CP to reroll my Psychic Test here. Plus, a reroll save on that guy is really obnoxious because he's a 3+ invuln. So sometimes your opponent gets like a smash character into him, and it's like, I'm gonna kill him, and you're like, oh no, you exactly kill me. Reroll save. Get him out of here. He's too strong, and then he smites you to death because he's awesome. Neurothrope's so good. All right, chat. I think we'll go ahead and close it out there. But thanks everybody for coming and hanging out. I think this was a good one. I think I'm pretty happy with our tier list here for today. I do have Throwdown Thursday planned for Thursday. We might be playing some Eldar. I don't think I'm gonna play. I think we're gonna get we're probably gonna get our 2 other players back, Cullen and Ramses, who we played over the last couple weeks, and I think they're gonna fight each other this time around. So if you enjoyed their games, you can come back and watch that one. That's going to be Thursday at the normal time, so 7 p.m. US Eastern. I don't know what factions they're playing yet, but I'm sure I'll find out tonight, and then I'll put the event up on YouTube, and I'll share it around. So come hang out with me doing that. Otherwise, I do have some competitive games to be streaming over on Twitch. So if you haven't followed me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/TacticalTortoiseTV, I really appreciate everyone who follows me over there. And I stream basically every day. I'm not streaming on YouTube. So I have some competitive games to do. I'm in an event finals and a top 16 to get through. That's with old school Crusher Stampede. But every day I'm not streaming Crusher Stampede stuff. I'm streaming, I'm playtesting with the new Tyranid Codex. So come check me out over there. I'm probably going to be live tomorrow around noontime US Eastern, playing some games for with the updated book, and then we have an event finals tomorrow evening as well. So we have a lot to do. We do some live commentary tomorrow, which should be fun. Otherwise, yeah, that's it for me. Am I going to do a tournament report for this weekend's event? It would, if my games are good, I will. Sometimes I don't do it because my games are kind of poopy, but it depends on how it goes. So if I have good games and it's a fun time, then I will do it next week for Tactical Tuesday, I think. I don't usually do like tournament report videos because they don't usually do very well, but I'll sit down and talk with people about it. Yeah, we'll see how it goes, basically. I will probably be posting about it on Twitter, so if you follow me on Twitter, you can go, you can check me out there, and I'll probably be talking about my games. At the very least. Anyway, thanks everyone for hanging out with me. This is a big one. We had a lot of people, and I hope you had a good time. Hope you got some good info, and I'll see you on Thursday. So yeah, cheers everybody. Have a good one.